Starting off today, we are heading over to Bumblebee, Arizona. Bumblebee is officially one of the cutest sounding towns with one of the most disturbing stories. This story is one of love that ends in the most horrifying way. In late October 2003, the mysterious and chilling killing of Brandon Roomba and his girlfriend Lisa Gieri shook the quiet backdrop of Arizona's vast desert. The young couple had set out for a romantic camping trip armed with a new camera to capture the essence of their adventure under the starlit sky. Their destination was a secluded spot near Bumblebee Road, just north of Phoenix, where they planned to spend the weekend away from the bustling city life to celebrate their first anniversary. But what was meant to be a peaceful getaway turned sinister when they never returned. Days later, both Brandon and Lisa were found with their lives taken, still in their sleeping bags. Despite a flurry of investigative efforts, including a very mysterious photograph retrieved from their camera depicting what looked like an eerie nighttime scene, the case remains cold. The chilling question of who could have done this and why still haunts detectives to this day. Next on our list, we are heading over to Pinetop Lakeside. Pinetop Lakeside is a lovely little mountain town that hides an absolutely gruesome story from 2008. Chad Coker, a man with a very turbulent past marred by DV and substance abuse, committed a horrific crime that shattered the peace of this seemingly ordinary evening. It all began when William Edward Westover, freshly acquainted with Coker's ex-wife, ventured out on a first date that would tragically be his last. As the night progressed, Coker, fueled by jealousy and rage and probably some of those substances, tracked down the couple after they had cautiously avoided him earlier at a local spot. The nightmare escalated when Coker forcefully barged into his ex-wife's apartment late at night. With a cold determination, he attacked Westover with a ferocity that ended in a horrifying number of wounds. Amid the chaos, Coker's ex-wife, while desperately fighting for her own life and that of Westover, managed to call 911, a decision that likely spared her from a similar fate. Police arrived swiftly, only to find a scene straight out of a horror film. Coker was apprehended while clutching a weapon moments after committing the very dreadful act. Next, we're heading over to Vulture City. Vulture City is the kind of place where you start to wonder what those old buildings could say if they could talk, and some people swear they hear whispers anyway. Nestled in the rugged landscapes of Arizona, Vulture City whispers tales of its ruckus past, drawing the curious and the brave to its deserted streets. Founded during the feverish rush of the 1800s gold boom, this now abandoned town once thrummed with the dreams and greed of fortune seekers. At its peak, Vulture City buzzed with miners, but it wasn't just the glitter of gold that marked its history. It was also scarred by a dark underbelly of violence and lawlessness. Stories of killing and betrayal were as common as the dust on its streets. At the heart of the town stands a grim sentinel, the huge ironwood tree. Local legend claims that this tree served a chilling purpose as the town's hanging tree, where numerous outlaws allegedly swung from its gnarled branches, their lives cut short by frontier justice. Today, some say that the spirits of those ill-fated souls linger, manifesting as shadowy figures that roam near the tree at night. Next up today, we are talking about the Superstition Mountains and the Lost Dutchman's Gold Mine. Imagine a legendary gold mine that people have risked their lives in pursuit of, and that is the Lost Dutchman's Gold Mine. This place is nestled within the rugged expanse of the Superstition Mountains in Arizona, of course, which if you've been a viewer of this channel for a while, you will know all about. The Superstition Mountains are said to be one of the most cursed and strange locations in all of the United States. According to legend, this elusive mine was discovered by Jacob Waltz, a German immigrant in the 19th century who took the secret of its location to his grave. Known colloquially as the Dutchman, a nod to the American mispronunciation of Deutsch meaning German, Waltz's hidden treasure has sparked the imaginations of many. Over the years, the story of this fabled mine has been told and retold, outstripping even the famous tales of Captain Kidd's treasure and California California's Lost Peg Leg Mine in popularity. Every year, approximately 9,000 people are lured by the promise of gold, venturing into the wilderness to uncover its secrets. Tragically, this quest has not been without cost. In one of the more recent and somber chapters of this saga, Jesse Capon from Denver, obsessed with finding the mine, vanished in 2009 while searching in the Tonto National Forest. His remains were tragically recovered 3 years later in a remote crevice. The story of the Lost Dutchman's mine, wrapped in danger and allure, continues to be a poignant reminder of the powerful draw of the unknown. Moving on today, we are heading over to Florence, Arizona. Florence looks like a lovely little town with some of the richest history in the entire county, but it holds the tale of a chilling crime with a horrifying backstory. Let's take it back to January 1984, when Robert Mormon was serving a 9-year-to-life sentence in Florence for kidnapping when an eerie twist of events unfolded during a 3-day furlough. His adoptive mother, Roberta, visited him staying at the quaint Blue Mist Motel. On Friday the 13th, a date synonymous with bad luck, Mormon purchased knives and food, setting a very sinister scene. His mother, supposedly ill, became the subject of whispered concerns among locals as Mormon weaved a web of deceit, claiming she had left the motel while her belongings suggested otherwise. As the day progressed, Mormon's desperate attempts to dispose of suspiciously described garbage bags raised alarms. The local pizza parlor owner, sensing something amiss, tipped off the police. Under the guise of concern, Mormon misled the authorities about his mother's whereabouts. Meanwhile, he sought help from a prison lieutenant to dispose of what he called dog bones, which alarmingly turned out to be human remains. The truth unraveled very quickly, leading to Mormon's arrest and a trial that peeled back the layers of a disturbed mind and a gruesome crime. Despite claims of a possible motive that drove him to violence, the jury found him guilty, unswayed by his insanity defense. On February 29, 2012, justice echoed through the halls of the prison as Mormon faced execution, closing a very dark chapter rooted in betrayal and a mother's tragic visit to a sleepy motel in Florence. Next up, we are talking about Phoenix, Arizona, more specifically Baseline Road. Okay, before you come at me, I know that Phoenix is not a small town, and I am not trying to pretend that it is, but when I heard about these horrifying crimes of this man known as the Baseline Killer, I truly had no choice but to tell you all about it. Mark Goudeau, known as the Baseline Killer, is a figure straight out of a grim crime thriller. Between August 2005 and June 2006, Phoenix was his chilling playground where he committed a horrifying series of crimes that included taking the lives of 9 people, as well as numerous other disgusting and disturbing crimes that I will spare you the details of. This period in Phoenix was marked by a cloud of fear and mystery as Goudeau operated under the radar, choosing his victims at random, which only added to the city's panic. His moniker came from the Baseline Road in Phoenix, where many of his early attacks occurred. What makes his spree particularly disturbing is the brazenness and brutality of his crimes, coupled with his ability to evade capture for almost a year. His arrest didn't just bring relief, it ended a very dark chapter in Phoenix's history, turning him from a mysterious figure into a notorious convict. Next on our list, we are heading over to Tombstone, Arizona. Tombstone just already sounds like a creepy place, and this place isn't just any old Wild West town, it's the poster child for cowboy showdowns and spooky tales. Established in 1879, this town quickly earned a reputation as the real deal frontier town, complete with saloon brawls, notorious outlaws, and the infamous gunfight at the OK Corral. But it's not just the bullets and bravado that keep people talking. Tombstone's also known for its very eerie encounters. Places like the Birdcage Theater, once a rollicking entertainment hub, now host a different kind of crowd. Ghostly figures of cowboys and saloon girls that some say never left. Mysterious voices, sudden chills, and phantom figures peering from old windows make it easy to believe that in Tombstone, some residents might have just stuck around forever. This This blend of gritty history and unresolved mystery makes Tombstone a town too tough to die and possibly too spirited to ever be forgotten. Next up, we are heading over to Bisbee. They say that beneath Bisbee's streets, old mining tunnels twist and turn, and some believe that they lead not just to forgotten gold, but to something far darker and stranger. Like, say, the underworld. Back in its heyday, Bisbee was a bustling mining town, vibrant with the clang of picks and the hustle of miners digging deep into the earth. Today, it stands as a relic of the past, but beneath its charming streets lies a sprawling labyrinth of old mine tunnels, a veritable underground city left over from its mining boom. The real intrigue, however, starts with the local legends that have seeped into the town's identity as much as the mines themselves. There are whispers among the locals about mysterious portals hidden within these tunnels, gateways that lead to another dimension, or even more thrillingly, to the underworld itself. Tales of strange disappearances and eerie, unexplained encounters beneath the surface lend an air of mystery that makes Bisbee a place where history feels alive, and the borders between the unknown and the known blur intriguingly. Next on our list, we are heading over to Goldfield Ghost Town. In Goldfield, it's not just the creaky old buildings and the dusty streets that give you chills. Whispers say the ghosts of gold-hungry miners still linger, their restless spirits echoing through the abandoned town. Taking it back in time, Goldfield was the epitome of a boom town, thriving with miners and merchants drawn by the lure of gold. However, like many such towns, its fortunes dwindled when the gold veins ran dry, leaving behind empty buildings and silent streets. But Goldfield did not stay silent for long. Reimagined as a tourist attraction, it offers a peek into a past filled with both prosperity and hardship. Wander through its recreated streets and you might feel the echoes of the past underfoot. Visitors report sightings and sensations that suggest the old residents, particularly a miner known as George, might still be hanging around, perhaps not ready to leave the excitement of the gold rush behind. Truly taking the meaning of ghost town to a whole new level with that one, George. Thanks so much. And finally on our list today, we are heading over to Jerome. Jerome, Arizona isn't just your run-of-the-mill ghost town. It's a place brimming with historical charm and eerie tales that attract the curious from far and wide. Back in its heyday, Jerome was a bustling hub for copper mining, thriving with energy and ambition. However, as the mines closed in the 1950s, the town's vibrant pulse slowed dramatically, leaving it teetering on the edge of becoming another forgotten relic of the American West. But Jerome refused to fade into oblivion. Instead, it reinvented itself, capitalizing on its spooky reputation to draw in tourists. The centerpiece of Jerome's ghostly allure is the Jerome Grand Hotel, once a hospital where thousands of miners were treated. It's crazy to turn an old hospital into a hotel, like you're just asking for ghosts. Today, it's reputed to be one of the most haunted buildings in the entire state, with guests reporting sightings of spectral patients roaming its halls, ghostly children playing tricks, and eerie, unexplained noises echoing through the night. The entire town, it seems, is a stage for the supernatural, with many of its buildings and businesses boasting their own chilling stories of the paranormal. This rich blend of history and mysterious occurrences make Jerome a uniquely captivating destination for those fascinated by the past and also the paranormal. Starting off, we are heading over to Canyon Lake. Canyon Lake was just a tranquil, gated community in California until it became the very dark backdrop for the heinous crimes of Dana Sue Gray. In a horrifying spree, Gray brutally attacked and took the lives of elderly women using their credit cards to fund lavish shopping trips. Her brutal acts, fueled by material greed, culminated in her arrest following a detailed description from a surviving victim. Gray's chilling case underscores a disturbing reality. Even the most serene towns can harbor sinister secrets, reminding us that evil knows no geographical bounds. Next up, we are heading over to Yuba City. On the surface, Juan Corona seemed like a regular man who was hired as a labor contractor at some fruit orchards in Yuba City, California. But what the residents didn't know is that But things would very quickly take a dark turn. By establishing his own business, he became a crucial link between local farmers and seasonal laborers. But the tranquility of Yuba City was shattered in 1971 when farmer Goro Keiichiro discovered a suspicious, man-sized hole in his orchard, leading to a very grim discovery: multiple bodies buried in shallow graves bearing brutal marks of violence. Corona, previously linked to a violent crime and known for his troubled history, emerged as the prime suspect. His connection to the victims, evidenced by receipts and chilling ledgers, alongside potential tools found in his home, formed the backbone of the prosecution's case. Despite an initial conviction being overturned, Corona was eventually sentenced to 25 life terms, marking him as one of America's most notorious serial killers at the time. His repeated parole requests have been uniformly denied, which I'm sure we can all breathe a sigh of relief for. Next up, we are heading over to Visalia. In the small town of Visalia, California, a series of burglaries, horrifying crimes, and even a killing known as the Visalia Ransacker incidents took place in the mid-1970s. But what if I told you that these crimes were solved decades later in a shocking twist? The perpetrator broke into homes, committed petty thefts, and escalated to violence, culminating in taking the life of Claude Snelling, a college professor trying to protect his daughter. These crimes terrorized the community and remained unsolved for decades until advancements in DNA technology linked them to a man, revealing the disturbing depth of his crimes across California. Many of you likely know the man who is most often referred to as the Golden State Killer. It is believed that these series of crimes in Visalia acted as a sort of training ground for the GSK before his later crime sprees that we are more familiar with. Next on our list today, we are heading over to Keddie, which is in Northern California. In the spring of 1979, Glenna Susan or Sue Sharp, seeking a fresh start after separating from her husband, moved with family to Northern California near to her brother. Initially residing in a trailer, the Sharp family later relocated to a more spacious home in Keddie, a quiet Sierra Nevada community. This tranquility was shattered on a grim morning in April 1981 when a horrifying scene was discovered in their home, plunging the town into a chilling mystery. Sue and 3 others were found deceased under brutal circumstances, prompting a very complex investigation involving local law enforcement and even the FBI. Amidst swirling rumors and a few solid leads, the case unfortunately grew cold, haunted by unanswered questions and the specter of injustice. The community of Keddie, enveloped in the shadow, would absolutely never be the same, and the Sharp family tragedy unfortunately remains unsolved. Next up on our list, we are moving over to Eureka. Eureka is usually like, wow, that's amazing. It's not right now, unfortunately. Eureka is a town in California, of course, and it is located on the shores of Humboldt Bay, but this beautiful coastal city was met with a very dark cloud back in 2014 when a local crime involving a priest rocked the town. The priest was sadly found in the rectory of his church, and authorities quickly knew that foul play was to be suspected. The feeling of the city changed after this crime, as people were unsure of how to respond or who could possibly be responsible for such a horrific crime. This was all fueled by the fact of where this crime had taken place, in a place of worship where members of the community went to feel safe or feel taken care of, and it was now a place of unspeakable evil. After thorough investigations by local law enforcement, a suspect came to light, a man named Gary Lee Bullock, who had recently been released from jail just days before this crime took place. In the end, Gary was put on trial and found guilty for his crimes. While he had tried to plead an insanity case, the evidence proving that after the crimes he attempted to destroy the evidence proved that he knew what he had done was wrong, and he was sentenced to 2 life sentences. Next up on our list, we have Placerville. Nestled in the heart of California's Gold Rush region, Placerville, once ominously dubbed Hangtown, holds a treasure trove of history mingled with spectral whispers from its boisterous past. This town, a pivotal site during a frenzied frenzied epoch of American history, proudly retains its architectural lineage, offering a tangible connection to the days when justice was often swift and harsh. As you stroll down its main thoroughfare, enveloped by the echoes of yesteryears, you can't help but feel the palpable presence of the Old West. Places like the Hangman's Tree Saloon and the historic Carey House Hotel are not just remnants of history, they are places where some say the spirits of those who once tread these grounds linger, unwilling or unable to move on. Next on our list, we are heading over to Felton. Picture this, a tranquil California town in the 70s. An era of peace and love suddenly becomes the place of a shocking event that shook the very foundation of the community. Enter John Linley Frazier, a man whose journey from a troubled youth to a convicted individual is as bewildering as it is tragic. Once a high school dropout from Santa Cruz County, Frazier spiraled into a deep obsession with apocalyptic prophecies and environmental zealotry, convincing himself that he was a chosen savior tasked with a very grim mission. On an unassuming day in October 1970, the serene mansion of Victor Ota, a well-respected ophthalmologist, became the scene of a very chilling act. Frazier, armed and determined, targeted Ota's family and their secretary, leaving a trail of sorrow in what was once a home filled with laughter and love. The perpetrator's manifesto, a very bizarre note left in an expensive car, hinted at a warped crusade against materialism, a tragic commentary on distorted ideals. While the case eventually saw justice, with Frazier sentenced and later found lifeless in his cell years later, the incident remains a very dark stain on the narrative of a town caught between its idyllic past and the harsh realities of a changing world. Next on our list today, we have Covina, California. On a seemingly festive Christmas Eve in 2008, Covina, a town of course in California, became the home for a shocking and very tragic event. The Ortega family, known for their love of the holiday season, had gathered to celebrate, embracing the joy and togetherness that Christmas is known for. However, the night took an unimaginable turn when an individual dressed as Santa Claus arrived at their door. This was no ordinary holiday visitor. It was Bruce Jeffrey Pardo, who unleashed a horrifying sequence of violence, leading to the loss of 9 lives at the Ortega family gathering. He didn't just use firearms, he also employed a makeshift flamethrower, turning a scene of celebration into one of absolute devastation. Pardo's actions were not just a spree of violence, but a meticulously planned event rooted in a personal vendetta stemming from a recent divorce. Despite the meticulous planning, the night ended in Pardo's self-inflicted demise, adding a very grim conclusion to an already dark chapter. The incident left an indelible mark on the town of Covina, transforming a date meant for joy into a memory of loss and sorrow. Next up, in a much lighter turn of events, we are heading over to Idlewild, California. Nestled amidst the towering pines and rustic cabins, Idlewild serves up its own unique cocktail of natural beauty mingled with the mystique of the unknown. It's not just a haven for artists and hikers, but also a hotspot for those intrigued by the paranormal and the arcane. Imagine sitting by a crackling campfire, the air crisp with mountain chill, when suddenly the night is pierced by inexplicable lights dancing in the sky. Are they wayward campers, a trick of the light, or something more mysterious? Whispers of occult rituals in the surrounding woods only adds an extra layer of intrigue, painting Idlewild not just as a picturesque retreat, but as a place where the veil between the ordinary and the extraordinary seems very thin. And finally, we are ending off our list today in Julian, California. In the serene town of Julian, known for its golden apples and rustic charm, there is a slice of mystery that rivals even its famed pies. As night falls over this quaint mountain retreat, some residents and visitors report witnessing mysterious lights weaving through the woods, an otherworldly spectacle that stirs curiosity and whispers of the unknown. Not only this, but a very peculiar phenomenon has been observed. Episodes of unexplained sleepwalking, where individuals are drawn towards the forest under a moonlit trance. These incidents, free from sinister undertones, paint Julian not just as a haven for pie enthusiasts and nature lovers, but also as a hotspot for those intrigued by the unexplained. It's a place where the ordinary meets the mysterious, adding an intriguing layer to this otherwise idyllic setting.
disappearance of this town led to it being dubbed as Demon Alley. Coming into number 7, we have the New City Complex. The New City Complex was built in West Milford, New Jersey. The town was located along Route 32 and was built by the City of Newark Water and Reservoir Plant in order to provide housing for plant workers. Located along Route 23, the town is now entirely abandoned and nobody knows why, although of course there are theories. It is said that the town pretty much dissolved overnight in 1992. Rumour has it that the seeming exodus happened after a dodgy person moved to the town in the late 1980s. Others say that the town was never a town at all, just a set of a movie which has been left to crumble. So, is it an inexplicably abandoned town or an urban legend? Coming into number 6, we have the Roanoke. What happened to the people of Roanoke? It is a question still baffling us 430 years later, as it seems that not one but 2 occasions the town actually totally disappeared. Twice! Let me start from the beginning. In 1585, a small group of settlers made Roanoke Island off the coast of North Carolina their home, although many left when they found the conditions to be unsatisfactory. In 1587, 115 English settlers came to join those who had left, but weirdly they found no one. Like, absolutely no one. Weirdly though, they didn't seem to be too disturbed by that, assuming they must have just upped and left because they didn't like it. At the time, the colony decided to send their governor, a John White, back to England to gather fresh supplies and fresh settlers to expand the colony. He went back and then 3 years later he returned with his supplies to the colony. He'd left his wife and daughter there. He was expecting a big reunion. But once again, he found no traces of the inhabitants, just like the time the settlers had arrived, only this time he knew something was wrong because his family wouldn't have upped and left without telling him. The only clue he found was the word Croatoan carved into a wooden post, which is extremely strange. So where did the settlers of the Roanoke go? They were absolutely never seen again. Now some theorists say that they were killed by a Native American tribe, although the fact that there was no trace of their bodies is absolutely suspicious. Others say that they decided to sail back to England for some reason or another but got lost at sea, but again, I'm saying this town disappeared twice, so there really has to be something else going on. Coming into number 5, we have Christmas, Arizona. I love a good abandoned town, I really do. I went to Calico in California back in December 2017 and it was so interesting and spooky, but now I really want to visit this town even more. Meet the lost town of Santa Claus in Arizona. Santa Claus! The town was so popular with Christmas lovers despite its untraditional setting in the desert. The town was founded in 1937 and created as a Christmas resort, just, you know, cause. A Swiss chalet, and no I don't mean the chicken place, a Swiss themed house is what I mean, and plenty of Christmas trees, a life-size dollhouse, a Christmas themed inn. Basically kids could sit on Santa's lap all year round and they loved it. Until they didn't. Just stopped being a town. It's now abandoned by the side of the road. Instead of Christmas pies and elves, all you'll find these days are rattlesnakes, and while I love the sound of this, at the same time I feel like it would have sucked for the employees. I once worked as an elf in a toy store and I felt like I had too much Christmas, so the actual day was a bit of a letdown, so imagine that being all year. To be honest, I'm actually thinking maybe Santa Claus in Arizona is better off disappeared. Coming into number 4, we have Petra. Petra is located in southern Jordan in the Middle East and was settled in the early 9000 BCE. By the 4th century BCE, it was the capital of the Nabatean kingdom. Petra was carved into the rock, but after the Roman Empire took over the city, it started to disappear. At first, the population diminished in around the 7th and 8th centuries. Then the city became abandoned for centuries, with very little footfall due to its remote location. Petra lay forgotten and all but disappeared as a result of natural disasters and neglect. It was off the map for a very long time until Swiss explorers rediscovered the city in 1812. As stories dribbled back to Europe of a lost town, intrigue grew. Local folklore claimed that the city has been created by the wand of Moses, having actually lost touch with the actual history of the forgotten city. In 1929, archaeologists led an excavation of the city. In 2016, even more of the city was discovered buried in the sands. Coming into number 3, we have the cities of the Amazon. When the dastardly colonists invaded swathes of the world, they brought back stories when they returned to their homelands. The Spanish returned home to regale stories of vast cities made of gold and filled with treasure along the Amazon. Some called it the City of Zed, others called it El Dorado. This led hungry explorers to seek out the cities, only when they got there, they never found them. ever. All they found was thick jungle. The golden cities that early pioneers had spoken of became nothing but myth and legend. That was until recently. In 2010, aerial images taken by National Geographic revealed earthworks spanning 155 miles in the Amazon. As Amazonian rainforests have been cleared for agriculture, further evidence of ancient pre-Columbian movements have been found. So speaking of this somewhat mythical, we have Atlantis at number 2. So bearing in mind that a lot of people believe that the Amazonian cities were a myth, but now it's looking like they may well have been legit, what do we think the deal with Atlantis is? It's enduring, I'll say that. Atlantis is a legendary city that is mentioned in a number of pieces of ancient Greek literature, including by the late great philosopher Plato. It is said that Atlantis was a thriving city filled with affluence and positivity. That was until it sank. Atlantis was said to have sunk in the sea in a single day and night. There's been a lot of speculation as to where that city may be. People have searched the Straits of Gibraltar between Africa and Spain and found nothing as of yet. If Atlantis was real, it would be over 11,000 years old according to our calculations. I actually do kind of have a feeling that we may one day find this lost city. Finally, coming into number 1, we have Langville, Montana. This is actually utterly creepy. It really has freaked me out. I was doing some heavy research into disappeared places and towns and spaces, and Google autocomplete kept suggesting Langville, Montana disappearance. Now, it would appear at the bottom in related searches too, as would Langville, Montana incident or Langville, Montana turned inside out, which is some Stranger Things stuff if I've ever heard of it. Oddly, when I clicked the link or even searched it up in the search bar, the internet yielded absolutely no information. Not a sausage. To me, this makes things even weirder, right? Why am I being suggested a mystery town when there's no evidence of it? I'm thinking that not only did this town disappear, but its data was also expunged from the internet. Why? I love a good cover-up theory, and let me make it even better with some investigative journalism. Here is the Google trend page for Langville, Montana disappeared. As you can see, it was actually frequently searched for in July and August 2018, then a few times after. Here I've compared it to searches for me, my name. I'm not saying people Google me a lot, but I am a real person on a channel with a lot of subscribers, so it does happen. So there was a time when Langville, Montana was being Googled loads, like super loads. Again, I'm just saying, why is there no record if people are Googling it? Questions, we need answers.
Surprisingly, there are a lot of haunted towns in the state of Texas. There are a lot on this list, and I feel like they probably make the record for most haunted towns in America. But either way, Wichita Falls is filled, and I mean filled, with haunting stories. There's a site in town called the Witch's Gate that used to be a mansion before it burned down in the 70s. After the man of the house died, his wife went a bit insane, turning to things like witchcraft to try and cope. She somehow burned the mansion down, killing her 2 sons with it. Another story claims the sons were robbed and it was the thief that set the house on fire. The boys haunt the area till this day, and I'm not surprised, I'd be pissed too. Another famous one is the White Sanitarium. Presently a private residence, it used to be a mental hospital in the 20s. After the place closed down, people have seen a group of men sitting around a table playing cards, perhaps the hospital's dead old staff, I don't know. But more famously, they've seen a woman in nurse's clothes roaming the building. There's also Pinky's Cave, which is a 3-mile drainage ditch, and kids used to hang out there years ago, but now it's filled with eerie sounds and homeless people, as well as the ghost of a woman and her child who drowned inside the tunnel during a storm. Coming in at number 9 is Pluckley, Kent. Pluckley is a small village in Kent that was named the most haunted village in England by Guinness World Records in 1989. So I don't want to overhype it, but at the same time it clearly deserves the hype. It's said that 12 to 16 ghosts haunt the village and the surrounding areas. The list includes a screaming man who worked at the village brickworks and fell to his death. Another is a highwayman who was pinned to a tree with a sword. That tree was soon named Fright Corner, and that's where his ghost looms every day. The Watercress Woman is the ghost of a woman who used to sit on a bridge drinking gin and smoking her pipe while selling watercress. You'd assume she drowned in the river she sat near, but the reality was a lot more grim. It's said she dropped gin all over herself and accidentally accidentally set herself alight on the bridge. There's also the ghost of a principal who hung himself and was found by his students. On LV Farm, which dates back to 1406, there's the ghost of Edward Brett who shot himself in the dairy. His last words to his wife were, "I will do it," and that's what can be heard whispered around the farm. Then of course, if we're more generic, there's the white lady and the red lady, because make no mistake, there is always a white lady ghost in every list. That's 7 ghosts already, and that's not even the end of it. Based on the deaths in the list, I get the feeling there's like an external force in the village that made people slightly suicidal. That's the vibe I'm getting, I don't really know. At number 8 we have Savannah, Georgia. Apparently it's widespread knowledge that Savannah is the most haunted city in America, and thankfully I've never been. The town was given this title because literally every building in the town is haunted, like everyone. Every building has a story, every building has its own ghost. It's like Savannah is more for the ghosts than it is for the living. The Hamilton Turner Inn is home to the ghost of a man smoking a cigar on its roof, as well as little children. Whose children are they? God knows. Dubbed one of the best haunted hotels in the US because clearly that's a real category, the Marshall House was a hotel that ended up being used as a hospital thrice in its history, and thus you can imagine all the dead patients as ghosts running around. 1790 Inn and Restaurant is the home of a scorned woman called Anna who haunts the upstairs guest rooms waiting for her lost love. But why is Savannah so haunted? Let's go back in history. The town has been the site of many atrocities. The siege of Savannah that killed 240 people left people thinking unsettled soldiers still lingered there. Savannah has also been the site of a yellow fever epidemic, so that's a lot of people dead just there. In 1820 there was a massive fire in town that destroyed 500 buildings, and there was an even bigger fire 25 years prior that destroyed half that number. The people that died in those fires have been linked to the houses they occupied. And let's not forget the countless murders that have taken place there as well. Filling our number 7 slot is Jerome, Arizona. Mining town Jerome was known as the wickedest town in the West for its brothels, gambling, and heavy drinking miners. The town itself actually burned down 3 times in 3 years at the end of the 1800s. At its peak, its population was 15,000, it then shrank to 50 people in the 50s, and currently it's 450 people. Inside the town, the Jerome Grand Hotel adds to the hauntings tenfold. Before it was a hotel, it was the United Verde Hospital where dozens of people died during the Great Spanish Influenza. Coughs, breathing, lights flicking, doors opening, a little child running on the 3rd floor either laughing or crying, it has it all. Sometimes the little ghost just stays at the foot of a guest's bed and stares at them all night. The sounds of newborn babies crying, and many guests have even spoken to the front desk about it out of concern, but then they find out it's coming from an empty room. A maintenance man named Claude Harvey was found under the elevator murdered in the 30s, and his ghost wanders around the hotel as well. There's even a ghost cat at this hotel. Can you imagine? I could go on, but I think you get the picture. Other than coming for tourism or to chase ghosts, no one really visits Jerome anymore, sadly. Now at number 6 is Helltown, Ohio. Founded in 1806 and formerly called Boston, this place used to be the oldest village in Summit County. Helltown was the victim of disappearing forest land when President Ford let the National Park jurisdiction expropriate land to make parks. The NPS started buying properties of locals in Helltown, and they were pissed. They even wrote "Now we know how the Indians felt" all over their houses, which I feel is a bit inappropriate, but either way, that was all for nothing. The plan fell through in the end and the village was abandoned. Things went wrong in 1985 when rangers visited Kredge Dump nearby and left covered in rashes and sick. Apparently the dump was highly toxic because chemicals were never disposed of properly. There's also the issue of the Satanist church, equipped with upside down crosses and all. Human and animal sacrifices even took place there, and that's not all. There was even an escaped mental patient in the woods in the town that killed a bus full of children, and that bus is still there, haunted by the ghost's murdered past. There's even a mutated snake in the town known as the Peninsula Python, so it's safe to say the town lives up to its name and has way too much going on. Coming in at number 5 is Granbury, Texas. This one's a bit of a small one. In 2010 their population wasn't even 8,000, so I mean it's an intimate little town. But regardless of that, it's been the home home for many infamous people over the years. Davy Crockett's wife Elizabeth moved there post the Texas Revolution, and Jesse James is even buried in the city of Granbury Cemetery. Billy the Kid apparently moved there too after faking his own death. But the biggest haunted appeal of Granbury is John St. Helen. He moved there in the 1870s to teach and would quote Shakespeare all the time. But people think John St. Helen was actually John Wilkes Booth, the man who assassinated Abraham Lincoln. Apparently he died in a bar fire and police threw Booth's body into the Potomac River. Others say he was assigned a new identity after the assassination. I mean, in town he walked with a strange limp and had a southern accent, so people were wary of him. On his deathbed he did confess to a priest that he was in fact John Wilkes Booth and told him where he could find the gun that killed Abe. But he didn't die that day. He fled the city, but it's said that when he did finally die wherever that was, he came back to Granbury. The Granbury Opera House is haunted by him now, and you can hear him quoting Shakespeare all the time. Some things never change. At number 4 is Galveston, Texas. This island city's residents are so used to seeing ghosts around that honestly, they don't even bat an eyelid anymore. During the early 1900s, the city opened the Galvez Hotel to honor military leader Bernardo de Galvez, and they commissioned a giant portrait of him to go in its lobby. Soon after the Galvez Hotel opened its doors, guests started complaining this painting would make them feel extremely cold and that his eyes would just follow them everywhere. The hotel is also haunted by a ghost bride who's been seen many times in room 501. It's said she hung herself after finding out her fiance died at sea, but to make matters worse, he didn't even die. He came to the hotel looking for her and for the marriage that would never be. There was also a storm in 1900, which is still considered the deadliest storm in US history that killed 8,000 residents. Mayfield Manor served as a morgue after the storm, and it's now haunted all year round, 24/7, around the clock. Dash Beardsley does ghost tours of the city, and he said he's seen them with his own eyes. Among his many stories is one of an office in town that calls 911 every night. The police have gone there countless times to find the office empty and no telephone even connected. Another story is the ghost of a salesman who died inside Madame Harvey's brothel in the 1800s. A police chief moved his body to a park and made it look like he was, feeding pigeons, and put him on a bench so it would be less embarrassing for his family, and the man's ghost is still looking for his car keys. Filling our number 3 slot is Jefferson, Texas. That's 3 towns in Texas in a row now. I really wasn't lying when I said Texas takes the cake on this list. It's been dubbed one of the most haunted towns in the South by many travel channels, and I know it sounds like I'm saying this is one of the most haunted towns ever for every single number, but it's true. Either way, the town is plagued by the apparitions haunting the Jefferson Hotel and the Excelsior House. Let's start with the hotel. There's a staircase inside which is known to be haunted by a little ghost that likes pulling hair and tapping guests' shoulders. Guests have been locked inside their hotel rooms and bathrooms for ages before being let out, whilst hearing a creepy laughter from the other side of the door. Orbs also appear in photos taken inside the hotel, and all this isn't even scaring me, it's just making me feel annoyed for the guests who have to stay there. Not my problem. Not my problem. Anyway, the Excelsior House is another hotel that's basically just as haunted. It houses a headless ghost on the 2nd floor, so might want to avoid that. And it even houses a woman in black carrying a baby. The ghost apparently even spoke to Steven Spielberg in the 80s, and so she got closer to my dreams of becoming an actor than I have, and she's dead. Great. Now at number 2 is Kerrville, Texas. This town is specifically known for 2 haunted buildings whose ghosts seem to go all around the town all the time. The first is Kerr County Courthouse, where 2 tragedies took place. The first was to do with a couple. The man asked his beloved to marry him, and she said no. So naturally, in a fit of jealousy and rage, he killed her and then hung himself right in front of the courthouse. Talk about unable to deal with rejection. Man up, boy. Both have been seen over 100 times at the courthouse and the surrounding area, just milling about. Honestly, I'd be so mad if I was the girl, honestly. Like I said, I didn't want to marry you, and now I'm stuck in this afterlife purgatory with you. Just just my luck. Anyway, the second story involves a prisoner who was killed during a rough interrogation, and he too haunts the inside of the building by banging on the bars and throwing papers about. Now the second building is Delaney Hall in Shriner University. From its name you can probably guess that it's a dorm building at the university, and it's haunted by 8 former students while living students still reside there. The students see doors slamming when the ghosts have fights with one another, and construction workers constantly complain about how their tools go missing because of the ghosts. And finally, at number 1 is Saratoga, Texas. The Light of Saratoga is the legend of mysterious lights appearing and disappearing on Bragg Road that all residents know. The road runs between Beaumont and Livingston and is next to the ghost town of Bragg Station. A haunted road and a ghost town, what a match made in heaven. So strange lights on roads have been featured in many other videos, so this phenomenon is nothing new. Some think it's simply swamp gas, but the most popular story behind it is that a railroad worker was decapitated during a railway accident, and the light comes from the lantern his ghost carries as he looks for his head. Honestly, if he survived this long without his head, I don't really think he needs it. The second explanation for the lights is a ghostly couple. It said the newlyweds were on their way home on the road when they were stopped by an innocent looking man on the side of the road. However, the man was not innocent at all. He had a gun and a knife and took the man's wife hostage into Big Thicket Forest and killed her there and then disappeared. The man was ordered to wait in the car till they disappeared, otherwise he'd shoot her. He waited and then ran into the forest trying to follow their sounds, but he was too late. So it said the lights on the road are him trying to find his bride's murderer. Love never dies, you guys. Your fiance may be murdered, but your love never dies.
Audley's Town. Historians are baffled by the lost County Down Irish village of Audley's Town. The town was run by landowner, the then Lord of the Land Viscount Bangor, who lived in the town's manor, Castlewood. When he died, his wife remarried and evicted all of the townsfolk. She then sent them off on a boat called the Rose, and they were told to set sail to Boston. The Rose left in 1852, but the boat never arrived in the New World. Some say that Lady Bangor's new husband, Major Savage Nugent, hated the townfolk and had them killed. These days the town is covered over by woodland, and part of the disappeared town was used as a setting for Game of Thrones. Coming into number 9, we have the trenches. This is so sad. During World War I, Europe kinda lost it. I say kind of, like it literally did. Countries turned on one another and fought a bloody battle to the death. On one side was Great Britain, France, Russia, Italy, Canada, and eventually Japan and the United States. On the other was Germany, Austro-Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire. From October 1914 to March 1918, neither side made much ground and were stuck in a deadlock battle fought in trenches along the western front of France. It is thought that the total length of the trenches was around 2,490 kilometers. Not only did millions of people die in the trenches, they lived in them too. They were forced to live in squalid conditions. Millions and millions of men. For all intent and purpose, these long thin trenches were towns. Then, as the war was over, the trenches were abandoned, leaving a history of bloodshed and violence in the ground. This is what they looked like over 100 years ago, and now this is what they look like today. This is the battlefield from Beaumont-Hamel in France, a notable fighting spot in the Battle of the Somme. Haunting. Coming into number 8 is Calico. Here is a picture of me at Calico Ghost Town in California. I stumbled across the place on Christmas Eve in 2017. It was a very interesting time of life for me then, and coming across a ghost town seemed to kind of fit with that weird and intense era. So Calico was an old silver mining town in the San Bernardino mountain range. The town was a flash in the pan of the silver rush era and was abandoned in 1907, with a brief return in 1915 when a cyanide plant was built to try and restore economic fortune. Sadly for Calico, it was to no avail. The town is undoubtedly mysterious and spooky, up in the mountains and in the middle of the desert, which is pretty remote. It is also said that the town is haunted by not one but 5 ghosts. There's a little girl ghost who only appears to children. There's also a ghost named Tumbleweed Harris, the lady in a white gown who wanders the outskirts of town, an angry cowboy, and the ghost of a dog named Dorsey. Coming into number 7, we have the Library of Alexandria. Alexandria is a coastal city in Egypt, sitting at the south of the Mediterranean Sea. The city dates back to 331 BC and was once the thriving capital of Egypt, but was reduced to nothing nothing more than a small fishing village in the late Ottoman period. Brutal ransackings and an earthquake destroyed a lot of the original ancient landmarks, including the Alexandria Lighthouse and Cleopatra's tomb, which has notably never been found. Most notably, however, was the biggest loss suffered by the city, the destruction of the Library of Alexandria. Now, this was a massive library, so big that it was hailed as the most significant in the ancient world. It was said to contain the equivalent of 100,000 books, which in the early days of the written word was a lot. It's uncertain who destroyed the library, just that it's no longer there. Julius Caesar's been blamed, but so have many people who ransacked the city over its history. Moreover, while the city has been discussed a lot in literature, we don't know for sure if it ever really existed. Alexandria as a city was rebuilt eventually, and a city of the same name stands in its place, but the original landmark is by and large lost to the ground in the ocean, taking many of the secrets of the ancient world with it. Another ancient one up for you next. At number 6, we have the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Now, the Gardens of Babylon were one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. They've been described as some of the most fantastical roof gardens of all time and were thought to have been located in Babylonia in Iraq. The gardens were believed to have been destroyed sometime after the 1st century AD, and many archaeologists have spent their lives looking for their remains. The existence is not confirmed by archaeological findings, and there have been suggestions that the gardens are mythical. That being said, they were thought to be in Iraq, and much of the country has been super ravaged by war over the years. Okay, I have to deviate from this video for a second to ask if anyone else remembers the Hanging Gardens of Babylon in Bill and Ted, because I absolutely swear that there was a Babylon bit, but I can't find it anywhere online, and rather like the gardens themselves, I'm thinking, are they mythical, or is this like a Mandela effect thing that I've just discovered? Let me know. Coming into number 5, we have Tyneham. Tyneham in England is a pretty spooky village indeed. The ghost village in South Dorset was abandoned in 1943 at the height of World War II. It was abandoned for fear of bombardment from the German forces. 225 villagers were rehomed, all of which thought that they would return after the war, but mysteriously the British government purchased the land and kept it for military training. The village is now opened at various times of the year for controlled tourism, but those who have been lucky enough to visit claim that it's very spooky indeed. In fact, some even claim that the village telephone rings even though it's disconnected from wires. The village was featured in a television show, Mysteries of the Abandoned, and this is what was said by visitors.
The village pond looks like any other village pond in England, except there's no wildlife there. There are no ducks. It's eerily empty.
Shut the front door! No ducks on the pond! Must be cursed, right? I have to say that the documentary is super dramatic and I kinda love it. They claim that it's eerie and that the church remains as it was in the 40s. Have a listen to this. I'm very, very here for the dramatic music.
Add a darker narrative. Like the cottages, which are little more than empty shells.
And these are in an unusual state of disrepair.
Da da da! But where are the ducks? Questions. Coming in at number 4, we have the lost villages of the St. Lawrence. Controversially, in 1958, 9 villages were flooded along the St. Lawrence River in Canada. Now, this was to make way for the St. Lawrence Seaway. The project was unpopular as 6,500 people were displaced, and of those people, the residents believed that the money that they got for their homes wasn't enough because the plans had already depressed property value. The villages were all in Ontario and are now under the water in the St. Lawrence River. Some of the areas are now popular scuba diving spots. Eerily though, it is possible to spot the outlines of the villages from the water when levels are low. Another sunken city at number 3, we have the withered city of Villa Epicuén. Villa Epicuén was a popular tourist resort near Buenos Aires, Argentina, but unfortunately it flooded in 1985, which meant that hopes and livelihoods had to be abandoned in the water. Can you imagine? Disappearing into the water, Villa Epicuén became a sunken town. However, weirdly, the waters began to recede in 2009, and now, after a drought, you can see more of the town emerging from the water than ever. 25 years after it disappeared, it began to re-emerge, only this time it was totally white, stripped of paint. The trees have died after their time underwater and away from the sun, and now they're white too, and the whole thing just looks ghostly and twisted and withered. Rusted cars and dislodged bathtubs litter the bank. Honestly, it looks so scary to me, but I also Kinda love it. This town or city, more like, still exists but may not in our lifetime, so I want to give you a little warning at number 2. We have Venice. Venice is sinking. The historic town is made from 118 small islands connected by bridges and dates back to the 10th century BCE. The issue is here climate change and tourism. Cruise ships are turning up in the harbour, which disturbs the waters. Thousands of passengers disembark from the ships and trample the city, rarely without buying anything and contributing to the economy that could actually help save the city. The old buildings of Venice don't have stable foundations and they're gradually subsiding into the waters of the lagoon. Marry that with tourism and overcrowding and the rise in ocean levels in general, and it seems very much on the brink. It would be devastating to lose this city. Finally, coming into number 1, we have Happy Valley. Happy Valley is not a happy place to be. The town used to be known as Williamstown and is located between Syracuse and Camden in upstate New York. Founded in 1850, the town was a farming community, but it was abandoned in the Great Depression. That being said, the Depression probably wasn't the reason people left, if the rumours are to be believed anyway. It is said that the men of Williamstown angered a witch that lived on the fringes of the community. How they angered her? Well, some say they taunted her, others say they abused her. Either way, in a fit of rage, the town was suddenly struck with plague that killed a whole chunk of the population. On top of that, crops began failing. Today, those in surviving towns near Happy Valley claim that actually it is haunted and they will not venture into the abandoned spot.
If I ever go to Montana, I'm gonna stick to eating steaks and walking around in the mountains. I think I'd rather run into a full-grown grizzly before I would end up in a town filled with ghosts. Well, actually no, if I run into a ghost, the worst thing that would happen is maybe it would scare me so bad I would leave a hot dookie in my fresh jeans. But a grizzly would literally turn me into hot dookie. If you want to run into the ghost of an old miner, this is probably the best place you can go visit. Garner, Montana was built up during the gold rush, and men from all over the land with bigger dreams than brains would travel here to try and strike it rich, finding some shiny rocks. Well, we all know that eventually the gold rush dried up and Granite, Montana didn't have much to offer after that. Now it's abandoned unless you count for the various spirits living at the residence. It's said that at certain times of day you can hear a ghost play the piano, which is probably the friendliest thing a spooky ghost can do. Oh, a ghost is like, oh, people are coming. I better play them a good tune so they know I'm not to be trifled with. And it's a hot spot for ghost lovers from all over the world. An average of 16,000 people a year come to check this place out. Someone should take a recording of that ghost piano song so Ariana Grande can mix it up and make a cool Halloween tune over it. At number 9 we have Hashima. Hashima is an island off the coast of Japan that used to be one of the most densely populated places on the planet. In the mid to late 1900s, it's thought that there were over 5,000 people living per square kilometer. The island was a hotspot because of the major underwater coal mine. Nothing like living next to a coal mine to really strengthen your lungs. It was a booming place until 1974 when the coal mine was gone. After that, people started to leave the island in troves. Now the entire place is deserted and there's just a shell of a city. It's almost scary to look at, like it resembles something out of an apocalypse movie. For years it was forbidden for people to visit the island, but now you can do tours in select areas. The ghost stories go deep as well. My favorite is of a little girl dressed all in white who stands on the beach. No one knows what she's looking for, but people think that her family abandoned her on the island because they couldn't afford to raise her. Now her ghost waits on the shore for her family to come back. That is sad. Oh. At number 8 we have Butugaychag in Russia. The story of this town is probably the worst fate you could ever meet. Between the years of 1945 and 1955, this place was a labor camp. So if you were arrested back then, they might send you up to this place to work in a mine. Now what was in this mine? Uranium! And what is uranium? Radioactive. And what do radioactive things do to human cells? Well, they rip them apart and you die one of the most painful deaths imaginable. It's thought that over 400,000 prisoners died at this camp from the terrible conditions. Working in the mine would literally cut your life expectancy down to months. And the land was previously thought to be cursed. When it was originally found by nomadic tribes, the herd of deer died from eating the grass there. We now know that was uranium poisoning. Now it's said that the place is plagued by the thousands of souls who experienced horrible, slow radiation sickness deaths. The town is now shut down, and you could go there if you want to die in a few months, but I would probably stay away. At number 7, we have Bodie, California, USA. When we're talking about ghost towns, you can bet we're gonna cover a lot of places that used to be packed with shiny rocks, especially in America. If you were in the USA back in the 1800s and you weren't trying to dig up a bunch of rocks, then what were you doing? You were a huge nerd. What, did you spend your time trying to figure out a cure for smallpox? Get out of here, you dork! Well, Bodie is a big time gold rush town. It's estimated in the late 1800s, Bodie was the second largest town in all of California with around 7,000 people. It really didn't take a lot to be a metropolis back then. You just needed a well, a good saloon, and then you were set. The gold deposit was found by the patriarch of the Bodie family. He didn't get to enjoy his findings though because he died in a blizzard not long after. His family built the town and then named it after him. It's said that his ghost still haunts the land. Probably because he's so salty he never got to get rich and fat off his findings. You can visit this town. It's known as one of the best preserved ghost towns in all of America. Because of the dry climate, the buildings are in great shape. At number 6, we have Oradour-sur-Glane, France. This ghost town is the site of one of the many horrible acts carried out by the Nazis. In 1944, everyone in the town was forced into buildings by Nazi troops. These buildings were then set on fire, and anyone who tried to run for safety was shot. Out of the several hundred people who lived here, only 7 people survived. How did they do this? Well, they had to cover themselves in the dead bodies of their friends and family. Now the town has never been repaired. It stands as a symbol to remember those who lost their lives in the brutal attacks by the Nazis. And paranormal investigators have visited the site, and they say it's plagued with tormented spirits. If you know anything about World War II history, you know that this isn't even scratching the surface when it comes to the horrific crimes committed by the Nazis. At number 5, we have Pyramida, Russia. This place used to be the most northern coal mine in the world, and even though it's cold as hell there and only 1,000 people live there, it was still an area under constant development. There was a hospital, schools, and a recreation center built for all the people who lived there. Throughout the 80s and early 90s, it was thought that this town would continue to grow and eventually become a winter hotspot. But the mine eventually dried up in the late 90s and everyone had to pack up and take off. The town was completely abandoned until the late 2000s when tourists started heading up there to bring a little more life to the area. Now there's 20 residents who live there only in the summertime to work at the town's only hotel. This place isn't really high on my lists of must visits. I think I'm gonna hit up Turks and Caicos and get drunk on a beach before I freeze my toes off in a former coal mining town. Also, if you do plan on visiting this winter wonderland, the only hotel in town is said to be haunted. Strange noises can be heard at night, and a tall black figure has been said to walk around the perimeter of the building. At number 4, we have Helltown, Ohio, USA. What a wonderful name. I heard they have an amazing cotton candy store and none of the schools have demons in them. Well, Helltown is a focal point of many conspiracy theories. The land was bought up by the government years ago and all the people living there were told to leave. Speculation is this happened because there was a chemical spill and the government didn't want to admit their massive screw up. Now the town is left untouched, but there are rumors that there is a giant mutated beast created by the chemical spill that walks around the area. Not really haunted, but a giant monster's in the same vein. At number 3, we have Pripyat, Ukraine. If you guys are part of the most amazing top 10 family, then you probably know I put this place on a lot of lists, but it's hard to pass it up. Pripyat is the closest city to the Chernobyl nuclear plant, and it's no wonder why it's a ghost town. Turns out people don't like dying an irradiated death. The disaster happened back on April 26, 1986, and it wasn't long after that everyone started running in the opposite direction. Now vegetation has taken over most of the town, but there are a few residents who have returned. But why is it haunted? Well, there is the Black Crow of Chernobyl, also called the Black Demon, Winged Creature, and many other names. It's said that this thing was seen on the day of the explosion, and some people believe that the demon himself caused the reactor to explode. Now the beast stalks the land, waiting for, I guess, another power plant to be built. I don't know what it wants. At number 2, we have Port Arthur, Tasmania. There are few places in history that you can call hell on earth, but this is definitely one of them. Port Arthur was once the site of a brutal English prison. The worst criminals in Britain were exiled to this island, and it wasn't anything like getting sent to Club Med. I can promise you there wasn't a mojito in sight. The British British government would practice psychological experiments on the inmates, and this was back in the 1800s, so you can only imagine lobotomies and other horrific practices were performed there. The living conditions were so horrible that inmates would kill each other so they could get the death penalty. I mean, you could cut out the middleman and just kill yourself, but to each his own, I guess. Now you can go on tours through the abandoned prison, and I don't think I need to explain to you why this place is haunted. And number 1 on our list is Poveglia, Italy. For our number 1 spot, we've picked a place that has centuries of grotesque history to go along with it. In the mid 12th century, this island was used as a place to dump people who were dying from the plague. Thousands of bodies were burned on this island, and going to the island was non-optional. If it was suspected that you had the Black Death, they sent you, and you stayed there until you suffered to death from this horrible sickness. After all this plagueness was done, it was a pretty chill spot until 1922, when a mental institution was built on the island. It's said that the head doctor would perform terrible experiments on all the people. He later went mad and killed himself. The shell of the institution still stands, and you can go visit it if you want. Also, fun fact about the island, it's said to be very haunted, and there were so many people burned on the island that the soil is 50% human remains. But that's probably just an urban legend, who knows. Cleveland, Ohio. We are going to kick off this list with a very populated city. There's tons of people living there. Why would this be on our list of places not to visit? Well, other than their sports teams struggle to stay above 500 every year since LeBron left, this is also a place you never want to go out at night because it happens to be the serial killer capital of the world. I don't know if there's something in the water or if it's watching the Browns every football season, but Cleveland has cranked out more serial killers than Walt Disney has Oscars. We have Donald Harvey, Anthony Sowell, Robert Burdella, Gary Hendick, Thomas Dillon, Michael Madison, Edward Edwards, and the Cleveland torso murderer, and the list goes on. Even some of the top-notch dudes like Dahmer cross state lines to chop people up in the Buckeye State. Maybe it's a rite of passage as a serial killer, like how bands want to play Madison Square Garden, because once you've played that stage you know you've made it. Maybe serial killers want to rip out throats in Cleveland so they can put it on their resume. And number 9, we have Acapulco, Mexico. You might end up here just to check out the beach and see the crystal clear water, especially in the wintertime. Go to a place that is nice and warm and drink a margarita on the beach, while back home everyone's drowning in snow. But if you head there, you're probably going to want to stay on the resort. No trips downtown. This city is a common place for hijackings, illegal roadblocks from rebel forces or cartel, not to mention most of the police and politicians are corrupt and might be more dangerous than the criminals. This place is a hotspot for gang warfare, with rival gangs battling each other for control of this territory. The mystery here would be, who can you trust? If the police are corrupt, they're gang members in the street, and you can't drink the water, I consider staying home in the cold. But maybe getting kidnapped by cartel is less harsh than 30 feet of snow. At number 8, we have Dubai. Known for being one of the richest cities in the world, it's possible that there are more exotic cars in Dubai than any other place on earth. But for a place that should be a mecca of health, science, and prosperity, with the amount of money flowing through it, it actually has a mysterious dark underbelly. Let's begin with the slave trade. How is Dubai able to create some of the most magnificent modern structures known to man? Well, they hire workers from other countries to come over and do the work for them. Sounds like a great deal. You move from another country to one that is much richer than yours, and then they immediately give you work. The only problem is they take your passport, you become a slave, and they pay you nothing. This has been reported to happen again and again with giant construction companies in Dubai, basically working human trafficking operations, sending out calls to impoverished countries telling them that there's work to be had. Secretly, it's all a trap. Also, if you're a woman, you should know once you cross the border, the law isn't on your side. What kind of upside down madness is this? Next time you're planning a getaway, you should probably choose somewhere where the law isn't trying to kill you. At number 7, we have Juarez Valley, Mexico. It shouldn't be a surprise that we are putting somewhere that's on the United States-Mexico border on this list of places you don't want to visit. All along this border is a hotspot for drug trafficking and is a place no one would really want to live. During its peak, the Juarez Valley was around 60,000 people. Now only 5,000 people live there. Most of them left out of fear of being murdered or extorted by the cartel. If you were to pass through this area, you would see a vast landscape of ghost towns and desert. The setting is so eerie and it makes you wonder why the 5,000 people living there haven't tried to leave already. It should be zero. Well, if I'm living in a place where the only industry is murder and drugs, I might relocate to a city that has a nice safe coal mine for me to work in. This place is so harsh it has been given the nickname Murder Valley. The mystery here is why anyone would ever live here. At number 6 we have Mount Hua, China. If you are afraid of heights, this next place is gonna make you feel like your gut is dropping into your butthole. Just looking at this place, I feel like I'm gonna have a free fall out of an airplane. This city is up one of China's great mountains and it's a main tourist attraction and it is terrifying. This mountain is considered the most dangerous hike in the world and for good reason. The scenery is beautiful, but if you want to get the opportunity to gaze at the amazing landscape, you're going to have to walk along wooden planks on the side of a mountain that have no railing, just a big chain to hold on to. Excuse me? Look at this video clip. The mystery here is, why does anyone do this? Why would you want to go to this place? So you can see how far your pee droplets fall when you piss yourself walking across these planks? The boards look like they were made by a 12-year-old who's failing shop class. And there are parts of the mountains that don't even have the boards because they've fallen off. You need to use grooves in the side of this sheer cliff to work your way across. Yeah. No thanks. At number 5 we have Caracas, Venezuela. Just to sum this place up, it has the 3rd most murders per capita in the world. If that's not enough to make you steer clear, then I don't know what else to tell you. The country also has a dictator in power who loves killing protesters who are just trying to fight for their freedoms. Pesky protesters always wanting to exercise their rights and be treated like human beings. But if militarized police doesn't get you, you can hope that one of the many drug cartels will. They will most likely rob you for everything you're worth or kidnap you. I really wonder what would happen if I got kidnapped. I have no money and I don't think anyone would pay to set me free. I would have to start a GoFundMe. At number 4 we have Fukushima, Japan. If being on a fault line and having a huge chance of getting hit by an earthquake or being next to an unstable nuclear power plant aren't enough to make you want to not visit this place, then I have one more kernel of information that just might make you go to Tokyo instead. After the earthquake hit Fukushima and the power plant was damaged, there was a massive evacuation. People left their homes and lives behind just so they could get away from the incoming wave of radiation. And what happened to the abandoned city? Well, nature tends to take over, and the forest started to move through the city in a huge way. It has been left behind for nearly a decade now, and with the expanding forest came wild boars who've been flourishing in the radiation zone. Radioactive boars. This isn't a Marvel comic, it's just super pigs that have been running all over the city, and the radiation has seemed to make them stronger. For whatever reason, these plutonium pigs seem to be less afraid of humans than the regular kind. Maybe the radiation has made them smarter, or maybe dumber. Either way, they're more likely to fight. At number 3 we have Pyongyang, North Korea. I mean, there are tons of reasons why this place is mysterious and why you would not want to go there. There's surveillance everywhere, watching everything you do. The secret police will snatch you up out of the streets and then take you to who knows where. And there's also work camps that you can be forced into for getting the wrong haircut. This is for sure one of the most mysterious places on the planet. No one really knows what's going on there except for the high-ranking government officials. At number 2 we have Kabul, Afghanistan. They say deserts are some of the most mysterious places on the planet, and Kabul is smack dab in the middle of one. The landscape seems like a desolate wonder, but if you venture in the city you'll find carnage and the horrors of war. The invasion of American troops left this place in disarray. There are still suicide bombings, Taliban, and public executions. This is not the place you go to create fond memories. The biggest mystery of this place is, where were those so-called weapons of mass destruction that gave the Americans free reign to invade? I don't think we're ever going to get the answer to that question. If you are a thrill seeker and you want to head into this war-torn area, then you better prepare yourself. It's recommended that you take war zone survival training, or you could just go to the Bahamas and take scuba training. One of those sounds way better than the other. At number 1 we have Mayak, Russia. For our number 1 spot we have one of the most inhumane experiments recorded in history. Mayak was a town that was built for one sole purpose: to do nuclear research. This was back in the 1940s and 50s, so you can imagine that the safety precautions were pretty lacking. Almost all of the workers sent over to build the facilities and perform maintenance were prisoners. They were given an exchange. They could go work within the Mayak facility and in return would be given a shorter sentence. Unfortunately, they didn't realize that they were being set up. The radiation levels at Mayak were so high that no one could survive there for more than 5 years. On top of tricking people into fatal slave labor, there were also a series of nuclear disasters that led to the death of thousands of people. Nuclear waste from the facility was dumped into a river that 24 villages used as a source of clean drinking water. There was also an explosion at one of the containment facilities that is considered the third largest nuclear disaster of all time. It was so severe that by 1959, every tree within a 10-mile radius was dead.
Starting off today, we are heading over to Malahide in County Dublin. Malahide is a picturesque town just outside of Dublin, Ireland, and it is steeped in charm and chilling tales, particularly around the historic Malahide Castle. One thing I learned on this list is there are a lot of castles in Ireland. This castle isn't just another beautiful Irish landmark, it's practically a convention center for ghosts. With over 800 years under its belt, the castle's walls are thick with history and apparently spectral residents. One of the most talked about ghosts is Puck, the castle jester who tragically fell in love with a noblewoman. Legend has it his unrequited love led to his demise on the castle grounds, and he's been hanging around ever since, possibly hoping for a second chance at romance. Then there's Sir Walter Hussey, another one of the castle's more permanent tenants. He was killed in battle on what was supposed to be his wedding day, and now his spirit is said to roam the castle halls, maybe mourning his lost love or just scaring the daylights out of tourists. So if you're ever in Malahide, take a stroll through the castle and see if you bump into Puck or Sir Walter. Just a normal day in this quaint town. Local beauty, historical intrigue, and a couple of heartbroken ghosts. Next we are heading over to Ballygally. If you're up for a spooky stay, Ballygally Castle in County Antrim in Northern Ireland should be right up your alley. This castle turned hotel isn't just known for its stunning views and historical architecture, it has a ghostly reputation that tends to keep guests on their toes. Legend has it that the castle is haunted by Lady Isabel Shaw, who tragically fell to her death from one of its high windows. The story goes that her husband locked her in her room, leading to her fateful attempt to escape. Today, she's said to roam the castle halls, perhaps seeking justice or just startling guests. Reports of eerie knocks on doors during the night and sightings of Lady Isabel's apparition gives this place a chilling vibe. Whether it's the wind or something more spectral, Ballygally Castle embraces its spooky lore, making it a perfect spot for those who love a little history mixed in with their haunts. So, if you hear a knock in the middle of the night, it might not just be housekeeping. Just saying. Next we're heading over to Rosslare, which is located in County Wexford. If you're up for a spooky adventure, head to Ladies Island near Rosslare in the county of Wexford. This place isn't just a scenic spot by the sea, it's got a reputation that could give even the bravest a little bit of a shiver. Back in the day, Ladies Island was a bustling pilgrimage destination, drawing folks from all over with its sacred energy. But now, some say those ancient pilgrims haven't quite left. Visitors often whisper about really eerie encounters and sightings of spectral figures that just linger in the mist. Whether it's the rustle of the wind that sounds like whispered prayers or a sudden chill that seems to follow you, the island holds on to its mysterious past tightly. Each creak and echo is a reminder of its deep, haunting history, making Ladies Island a magnet for ghost hunters. So if you're ever in Rosslare, why not take a detour to this ghostly retreat? Just remember, it might be more than the sea air that sends a chill down your spine. Next we are heading to Clononey. Tucked away in the heart of Ireland in County Offaly, Clononey Castle stands as a haunting reminder of its very grim past. This towering structure isn't just another picturesque ruin, it's a place where history and horror intersect intertwine. The castle is notorious for being the final home of two cousins of Anne Boleyn, the ill-fated Queen of England, who were said to have been imprisoned and met their untimely deaths within these stone walls. Today, it's said their spirits roam the castle grounds, perhaps unable to leave the scene of their sorrow. The castle's remote location only adds to the spooky energy, with its thick stone walls and dark, narrow passages creating the perfect setting for ghost stories. Whether you're a history buff or just a seeker of the supernatural, Clononey Castle offers a chilling glimpse into a past filled with intrigue and tragedy, making it a must-visit for anyone touring the Emerald Isle's spookier sites. Next, we are heading over to Portumna. Located in County Galway, Portumna might seem like just another charming Irish town at first glance, but dig a little deeper or just wait until the sun sets and you'll discover its spine-chilling side. The town is famed for the eerie ruins of the Dominican Priory and the formidable Portumna Castle. Wander through these historic sites and you might just experience more than just a lesson in architecture. Visitors often talk about sudden, inexplicable drops in temperature, like walking into a natural refrigerator. Then there are also the ghostly figures and whispers that hang in the air, almost as tangible as the damp Irish mist. Some say these are the restless spirits of clan leaders, once powerful figures who now make their presence known in more ghostly forms. Whether it's the sound of footsteps echoing down an empty hall, or the fleeting glimpse of a shadowy figure through the corner of your eye, Portumna offers a hauntingly good time for anyone brave enough to explore its past. Around our halfway mark today, we are heading over to Kilkea. Tucked away in County Kildare, Kilkea Castle isn't just another Irish castle. It is steeped in stories that walk a fine line between the eerie and the enchanting. Dating back over 8 centuries, it's one of the oldest inhabited castles in Ireland, but what really sets Kilkea apart is its unique ghost story. According to local legend, every 7 years the castle's founder, Sir Walter de Riddlesford, is said to ride around the castle grounds on a horse with silver shoes. Unlike most ghost tales that might send a shiver down your spine, Sir Walter's spectral visits are actually considered a good omen, bringing luck to those who witness his apparition. It's kind of a nice, charming twist to the usual haunted house stories, blending the mystical with the historical in a setting that's as beautiful as it is mysterious. Whether you're a history buff or a ghost story enthusiast, or you're just in it for the scenic views, Kilkea Castle offers a slice of the past with a ghostly good luck charm thrown in just for a little good measure. Next, we are heading over to Ardgillan. Found in County Dublin, Ardgillan Castle has sprawling gardens and historical architecture, and it's also got a creepy story that makes it a hotspot for ghost hunters and lovers of the paranormal. The castle is said to be haunted by the Lady of the Stairs, the sorrowful spirit of the original owner's wife. Legend has it that she met a tragic end right at the castle, overwhelmed by grief upon hearing that her husband had perished at sea. She supposedly threw herself from the castle's bridge. Since then, her ghost is rumored to haunt the area, particularly the bridge, where she is occasionally seen by visitors, forever stuck in her moment of despair. This eerie tale adds a layer of spectral intrigue to the castle, making Ardgillan not just a beautiful place to visit for its grounds and history, but also a thrilling adventure for anyone fascinated by the tales of the supernatural that seem to permeate the very stones of this ancient structure. So if you're ever wandering around Ardgillan Castle, keep an eye out for the Lady of the Stairs. You might just catch a glimpse into this tragic figure from the past. Next, we are heading over to Enniscorthy, nestled in the heart of County Wexford. Enniscorthy is a town with a past as rich as it is eerie. At the center of its many ghostly tales is Enniscorthy Castle, a fortress that has stood the test of time, bearing witness to numerous battles and sieges throughout the centuries. The castle's storied walls are said to echo with more than just the sounds of tourists and historians. They're rumored to be haunted by the spirits of former prisoners who once languished in its dark, dank dungeons. Locals and visitors whisper about chilling encounters and mysterious sounds, footsteps echoing through empty halls, faint whispers in the night air, and the clinking of ancient chains. These spectral sightings make Enniscorthy a magnet for ghost hunters and those fascinated by the paranormal, adding a very spooky layer to this otherwise very charming Irish town. Next, we are heading over to Leap. Of course, no list on creepy places in Ireland is truly complete without Leap, more specifically Leap Castle in County Cork. It isn't just any old castle, it's reputed to be the most haunted castle in Ireland, and for good reason. This place isn't just about drafty halls and eerie echoes. Thanks to its seriously spooky residents and a history that reads like a horror novel, it is truly the stuff of legends. One of the most infamous spirits lurking here is the Elemental, a creepy entity that's about as friendly as a bear with a headache. This spirit isn't just your standard ghost, it's said to be a very powerful presence, leaving a chilling air of menace throughout the castle. The castle's past is just as unsettling, with a legacy of brutal clan battles, think medieval warfare, right in the corridors. And if that's not enough to make you shiver, hidden dungeons were once stumbled upon, revealing human remains that tell tales of gruesome ends. Leap Castle's layers of history and hauntings make it a prime spot for those who love a good ghost story wrapped in the mystique of old Ireland. So if you're ever in Leap and fancy a dose of the supernatural, you know where to go. Just don't say I didn't warn you. And finally, rounding out our list today, we have Loftus Hall in County Wexford. This isn't just your regular old spooky mansion, it's the heavyweight champion of haunted houses in Ireland. So picture this, an imposing, eerie estate with a history that gives even the bravest ghost hunters the chills. The most chilling tale from Loftus Hall is that of a mysterious stranger who arrived one stormy night joining a family card game. Legend has it that during the game, a woman dropped a card and bent under the table only to discover the stranger had cloven hooves instead of feet. Realizing that they were in the presence of the devil himself, the family watched in horror as he transformed into a fiery ball and shot through the roof, leaving behind a dark supernatural presence that lingers to this day. Over the years, visitors have reported all sorts of paranormal activity, from ghostly whispers to eerie cold spots, and even sightings of a distressed woman wandering through the halls. Loftus Hall's blend of historical drama and bone-chilling ghost stories make it a must-visit for anyone who loves a good scare, drawing thrill seekers and paranormal experts from around the world eager to explore its haunted heritage.
We're gonna kick things off with Loveland. How on earth did I not put Loveland, Ohio in part 1? Loveland is home to one of the strangest creatures said to stalk the state, the Loveland Frog. But it's also home to a supposedly haunted castle. Loveland Castle was constructed by Harry Andrews. Very interesting man this guy was. He had a lot of interest in knights and medieval lore. Andrews was born in 1890. He worked as a medic during World War I. He then contracted meningitis during the war and was believed to be dead. His body was actually moved to the morgue, like he was done. But when his body was taken back to the hospital to be dissected, the doctors were like, hey, you know what, why not? Let's just see if we can get his heart beating again with adrenaline. Miraculously, it worked. Andrews, who'd now spent a whole bunch of time in Europe and then almost died, was now even more into medieval history and returned home with this newfound determination to build his very own castle. Eventually, he constructed Loveland Castle along the banks of the Little Miami River. Andrews then moved into the castle, where he lived until he died in 1981. Today, the castle is the headquarters for the Knights of the Golden Trail, an organization Andrews started dedicated to upholding the principles of knighthood, but Harry Andrews' spirit is said to still roam the castle grounds. Objects will mysteriously disappear or move, and voices are heard echoing through the corridors. And as I said at the top, of course, Loveland's supernatural reputation doesn't end with this castle. One of the most famous legends is that of the Loveland frog, or frogs. There have been multiple large frog-like creatures spotted near the Little Miami River over the years. Next up we have Ashtabula, which is said to be haunted by the spirits of a tragic train disaster. So on December 29, 1876, the Pacific Express No. 5 crossed the Ashtabula Bridge, but because of particularly cold weather and structural weaknesses, the bridge collapsed, sending the train plummeting into the icy river below, and in the end 98 people died. The scene must have been absolutely horrific, with rail cars crashing into each other and igniting in flame, and firefighters were unable to put out the flames, so people just cried out in pain and horror as they were consumed by fire, trapped in the wreckage. It was one of the worst rail accidents in US history, and the screams of those victims still haunt the area to this day. Some say you can occasionally hear them above the rush of the river. The Chestnut Grove Cemetery holds the remains of 19 of these victims, but their spirits are said to be very much active. Visitors to the cemetery have reported seeing ghostly apparitions. But along with the victims of the tragedy, there's also said to be the ghost of Charles Collins, one of the developers of the bridge. Witnesses claim to have seen his guilty spirit weeping at the sight of the tragedy or crying over people's graves. Some claim to see tiny lights even hovering below the new bridge where the old one once stood. Rogues Hollow near Doylestown, Ohio has its fair share of spooky tales as well. It's said that a mill worker died in a pretty gruesome manner, getting crushed by the mill wheel, and now his spirit is said to guard the area, keeping outsiders at bay. Then there's the eerie tale of the headless horse and the ghost oak tree. So at one time there was a large oak tree near Route 65, and one of its branches hung so low that riders on horseback had to duck as they passed under it. Well, one story goes that the branch was weighed down extra low with ice, and a poor horse just ran into it at top speed, lobbing off its head. From that point on, riders passing the area late at night would occasionally come across a devilish figure riding a ghostly headless horse. Next up we have Oxford, Ohio, which has one of the coolest ghosts, a phantom motorcyclist. So the story goes that back in the 40s there was this farmer's daughter. She was head over heels for this guy who was a bit of a James Dean type, leather jacket, motorcycle, very rebellious. Also a lot like me, minus the motorcycle, the leather jacket, and the rebellious part. His name was James, that's the similarity. And her father was not too thrilled about their relationship. He thought the guy was trouble, and he probably wasn't wrong. He forbade his daughter from seeing him. So to avoid her father's disapproval, they met up in complete secret, usually late at night when the coast was clear. And when it was, the girlfriend would flash the porch light 3 times as a signal for him to come over. Well, one night, the boyfriend decided he wanted to take their relationship to the next level and propose. He saw the 3 flashes and revved up his motorcycle, racing towards her house to pop the question, but as soon as he sped down the road, he lost control of his bike, crashing into a barbed wire fence. And ever since, people claim they've seen this mysterious light flickering in the distance along the road where he crashed, said to be the spirit of the phantom motorcyclist, still trying to reach his girl's house to ask for her hand in marriage. Next on the list is Chillicothe, where there were a series of mysterious disappearances between 2014 and 2015. Now, it all began in the spring of 2014 when Charlotte Trago vanished without a trace. Trago, who had struggled with addiction, was a mother of 2, and she remains missing to this day. Shortly after Trago's disappearance, another woman, Tamika Lynch, who was a friend of Trago's, went missing as well. Her body was discovered 3 weeks later by kayakers. It's pretty obvious there was foul play, but the official cause of her death was deemed inconclusive. Then there was the disappearance of Wanda Lemons in November of 2014. She's also never been found. On Christmas Day 2014, Shasta Hemmelrick went missing. Her body was later recovered from the Scioto River. Authorities claim she took her own life, but her family, as well as many others, think someone took it from her. Then there was the disappearance and discovery of Tiffany Sayers' body in May 2015. Her remains were found in a creek, covered by a sheet. And the final victim, Timberly Claytora's body, was found near an abandoned building. She died at the hands of a firearm. And the case just would have been handled completely differently if these women hadn't been battling addiction. That was the one thing connecting all these. They were all involved in that world. And there's just this kind of lax attitude when it comes to situations like this, unfortunately, where authorities are like, well, you know, they're part of that world. This is just what happens. So it really hasn't got the attention that it deserves. Now we move on to the town of Lancaster. Here, there used to be a home with an incredibly dark past, the Mudhouse Mansion. So the mansion's origins go back to the mid-19th century when it was built as a grand estate for a wealthy family. But as time went on, the home fell into disrepair and eventually it was abandoned and left to decay. And over the years, all these urban legends started to form around it. One of the most infamous stories is that the family had actually died in the mansion. Some versions of the tale claim that they were killed by an unknown assailant. Others go that they'd been driven to madness by some sinister force lurking within the mansion's walls. The Mudhouse Mansion was even said to be the birthplace of Bloody Mary herself. The mansion was demolished in 2015, but some folks will still claim to see ghostly figures of the mansion's former residents wandering the grounds, forever trapped in a limbo between the worlds of the living and the dead. Alright, one of the strangest unsolved mysteries in Ohio has to be the Circleville Letters case. Now I'm going to paraphrase here because there's a lot of detail. We could probably do an entire video about this case alone, but I'll go over it. It all started in 1976. Residents of Circleville started receiving these unsettling, threatening letters containing all these intimate details of their personal lives. The letters were postmarked from Columbus, Ohio, but there was no return address. One of the receivers of these letters was Mary Gillespie, a bus driver. She was accused in one of these letters of having an affair with the school superintendent, and the letters just kept coming in from this unknown sender. Then, Mary's husband, Ron, also became a target. He received a chilling ultimatum to end his wife's supposed affair or face dire consequences: death. Ron was found dead in his pickup truck after a mysterious phone call which had seemingly confirmed his suspicion about the letter writer's identity. He'd left in his pickup truck with a firearm but was found dead soon after, having crashed into a tree. Now, authorities ruled Ron's death an accident, but then the letters continued. A number of residents received letters saying that Sheriff Dwight Radcliffe, who had investigated Ron's death, had been involved in a cover-up. At one point, this mysterious writer even planted threatening signs along Mary Gillespie's bus route, one of which she went to take down, only to find out it'd been booby-trapped. If Mary had pulled the sign down in a particular way, a small pistol would have fired at her. Now, one man was arrested, Paul Freshore, but it's never been 100% verified that he was behind these letters. Eventually, he got out on parole. Case is still a mystery to this day. In the Hills and Dales Metro Park in Kittering, Ohio, there's a structure with a very shadowy past, the Haunted Witch's Tower, also known as Frankenstein's Castle. It was completed in 1941, and this 30-foot tall tower was constructed by boys with the National Youth Administration using salvaged stone. Its purpose was to provide panoramic views of the community country club, with its lookout platform offering vistas stretching up to 15 miles. But because of how remote the tower is, a lot of young hooligans started flocking there in the 60s. Graffiti covered its walls, and bottles of liquor and beer cans littered the grounds. Even shingles torn from the roof and glass bottles became ammo for attacks on passing cars below on Peterson Boulevard. Then in 1967, during a thunderstorm, a young woman named Peggy Harmison sought shelter inside the tower with her boyfriend, Ronnie Stevens. Bad move. Lightning struck the tower, killing Peggy instantly. Her body was found on the 11th step, half covered in severe burns. Ronnie survived, but he was found in a state of uncontrollable shock, apparently running around screaming. And ever since that night, there have been stories about the ghost of Peggy haunting the tower. Alright, let's switch things up with a haunted golf club. You don't hear about haunted golf clubs very often. Legend has it that in the 60s, a bride fell from a balcony at Oakhurst Golf Club in Grove City, Ohio, and her ghost is said to haunt the establishment to this very day. One of the most frequently reported sightings involves the ghostly figure of a woman dressed in white, believed to be the ghost of the bride. The upstairs kitchen, located near the ballroom where events are held, is said to be a hotspot for paranormal activity. Employees have reported hearing unexplained sounds of pots and pans clanging and knocking late at night, only to discover that items have been mysteriously rearranged by morning. Alright, we're finishing things off today with Minerva. It all began in August of 1978 when the Caton family reported encountering a strange creature near their home. According to the Catons, they were enjoying a quiet evening when they heard unusual noises coming from outside. They came face to face with this towering ape-like creature standing over 7 feet tall. The creature reportedly had shaggy dark fur covering its body, and had glowing red eyes, and emitted this foul odor. The Catons quickly ran back to the safety of their home and phoned the cops. In the days that followed, all these other sightings of a mysterious creature were reported by other residents of Minerva. Witnesses described similar encounters with a large, hairy beast lurking in the shadows, but none of the stories were scarier than the Catons, who said the creature returned to their property several times, hurling rocks at their home, staring at them through their kitchen window, and even killing their dog. It's one of the most violent Bigfoot cases ever reported.
So Bannack was founded in 1862 when John White discovered gold on Grasshopper Creek. 2 years later, it became the first territorial capital of Montana before it changed to Virginia City. At its peak, it had a population of 10,000 people. You know, quite a bit for back then. But the sheriff was accused by some of leading the ruthless band of road agents called the Innocents. Early accounts claim the gang was responsible for the murders of over 100 innocent people, though historical records account for about 8. So it's kind of iffy. The sheriff and 2 deputies were hanged without trial in Bannack in 1864. 22 individuals were accused, informally tried, and hung by the Vigilance Committee, which is the Montana Vigilantes, of Bannack and Virginia City. So the city kept going into the 1930s with a fluctuating population, but then, in the 50s, gold workings dwindled. And then Bannack was declared a state park. The last residents left in the 70s. So all that with the Wild West, and then it's a state park now. Kind of funny. On to number 9, St. Elmo, Colorado, USA. So St. Elmo is the best preserved ghost town in all of Colorado, and it boasts the most hauntings and paranormal activity of any ghost town in the state. So it was settled in 1878 as Forest City and officially became St. Elmo in 1880. It was a gold mining settlement, just like many on this list, and the Mary Murphy mine recovered over $60 million worth of gold while it was in operation. It's just a lot of gold. But it's not a complete ghost town right now since it is privately owned with part-time inhabitants as of right now. You could even say the ghosts there are part-time inhabitants too. The most famous one is Dirty Annie. Her real name was Annabelle Stark, but she got her nickname Dirty Annie after her mother passed away. Annie and her brother were left to run the hotel their mother used to run while their father was in the mines. Since their mother was harsh and strict on cleanliness, after her passing, Annie would walk around in filthy clothing with her hair in a mess as a form of quiet rebellion. But anyways, some people say they have still seen her walking around the town, just strutting her stuff, hair a mess, filthy clothes. And then those who inherited the hotel swear the hotel went cold and all of the doors slammed shut when their grandchildren were playing inside. So could that have been Dirty Annie as well? Just toying with the kids? Number 8. Bodie, California, USA. So this ghost town sprung up after William Bodie hit gold in 1859. Then from 1877 to 1882 it had more than 10,000 residents and produced over 35 million in gold and silver. Also, at one point there were reported to be 65 saloons in town in addition to brothels, gambling halls, and opium dens. Like, it was the Wild West after all, but that's a lot of saloons. But sometimes that mix of money, gold, and alcohol would lead to unexpected fatalities. Newspapers reported that townspeople would ask in the mornings, "Have we a man for breakfast?" I don't know how to do a southern accent. Anyways, that meant, did anyone get killed last night? Because that's just how it was there. But not anymore. Now there are over 200 abandoned wooden buildings in what is Bodie State Historic Park. The buildings are not restored, but preserved. So you can go see a little bit of the Wild West yourself if you want. Number 7. Cerro Gordo, California, USA. So silver was discovered in Buena Vista Peak in 1865. Its discovery brought in miners, but also unsavory characters. At one point, the death rate was 1 person per week. There was no sheriff for miles around, and even the doctor fled the town, scared for his life. Basically, it had a reputation for death. So once Union Mine closed down in 1938, the population also died down. As of right now, there is one resident, Robert de Moraes, who is coincidentally a former miner. He serves as the town's unofficial caretaker. Number 6. Cahalba, Alabama. Cahalba became a ghost town shortly after the Civil War. It was once the capital, but that title was taken away. What is really interesting to me is its ghost, Peague's ghost. In 1862, the story goes that a young couple was out for a walk on a moonlit night. Romantic. As they walked behind Colonel C.C. Peake's house, a glowing ball of white light seemingly just appeared before them. It was just floating on the air. This ball would dart first on one side of the walk and then on the other, and then approach close enough to almost touch them, and then recede and disappear into the shrubbery. And then suddenly it was seen beside them floating again. So they thought the apparition was a trick or something fancy, maybe caused by the same peculiar phase of moon shadows, something like that. So they turned to retrace their steps, and then it happened again and appeared in front of them. Went through the same thing. So at this point, the man and his lady determined to test the materiality of the object, but then he tried to grab it, and then it darted just beyond his reach, disappeared, saw not again. Other people have seen it, and the glowing light, will-o-wisp, or whatever it was, from then on was known as Peague's ghost. Number 5. Kennecott, Alaska, USA. Up and to the left in Alaska is Kennecott. It was once a thriving 20th century copper mining town, and it is now desolate. From 1911 to 1938, Kennecott employed as many as 300 people in the mill town and 300 in the mines. It processed nearly $200 million worth of copper, but once the copper tapped out, the company that established the town quickly withdrew from the settlement. Kennecott Copper Corporation left abruptly and left behind their equipment, buildings, and belongings. So now the National Park Service and tour operators offer guided access to several historic buildings, including the 14-story concentration mill. That'd be something fun to see, I think. In that mill, they apparently talk about the tales of lucky fortunes, frontiersmen, and tragic endings that occurred in the remote wilderness. Number 4. Shakespeare, New Mexico, USA. Shakespeare was an old mining town that was frequented by outlaws. It was called Mexican Springs first, then Grand, and then became Ralston City when it was a mining town in 1870. When the silver started running low, the population began to run low as well. But then in 1879, before it was about to be a ghost town first time, most of the land in the city was bought by Colonel William G. Boyle. He gave the town a new start under the name Shakespeare. So apparently Billy the Kid washed dishes at a hotel there, and 2 notorious cattle raiders were captured and hung. The records state that the 2 were hung because Russian Bill stole a horse and Sandy King was just a damn nuisance. So Shakespeare closed down after a bigger town sprung up 3 miles away and the mines closed after the Depression of 1893. So it is now a historic site, preserved as a monument to the real Old West. A lot of these are out, Old West. Pop up for mining, and then they're done. This is me mining now. Number 3. Burke, Idaho, USA. So mines were built in 1884 for silver and lead in Burke, and then the town was built after that. What makes this place cozy is that it is built in a canyon that at its widest measures 300 feet wide. Because of this, the railroad went directly through town and shared the way with cars. Whenever the train passed through, cars would have to pull over. When the railway expanded, it ran right through the town's hotel. A covered walkway connected 2 sides of the buildings, and it let 5 cars of the Northern Pacific Railroad pass through each day. But not everything was well and good in the cozy little town. There were tensions between the miners and the owners of the mines. In 1892, gunshots broke out between Union men and the replacement workers in the mine. The gunfight escalated and ignited a box of dynamite in one of the mills, causing 6 men to die. It got so bad that the governor of Idaho sent National Guards to Burke and declared martial law. But it didn't stop there. In 1899, when Bunker Hill Mining Company fired 17 miners for joining the Union, in response the laborers dynamited the Bunker Hill mine and more lives were lost. Then, with all of that history, plus other natural disasters like fires and avalanches, there is talk of paranormal activity in the area. Number 2. Terlinga, Texas, USA. The nickname of this town is Terlinga Ghost Town, and the motto is the Texas Ghost Town. It's also both a ghost town and not at the same time, I would say, because in the mid-1880s the discovery of cinnabar brought miners to the town, bringing the population to 2,000 people, but not much is left of those mining days. Now all that's left is a ghost town of the Chisos Mining Company and several nearby capped and abandoned mines. But also, the 2010 census set it at a population of 58 people. This is mainly due to its proximity to Big Bend National Park, so it's mainly a tourist destination. There's also reported sightings of Elvis singing at the cemetery, so it can seem like Las Vegas in the desert, I guess. More of a desert. Las Vegas isn't really a desert, you know? Last but not least, number 1, Buddville, New Mexico, USA. So Buddville was a tiny community along Route 66. It was established in 1928 by Howard Neal Bud Rice and his wife Flossie. They made many businesses and Bud cozied up to local law enforcement, but also overcharged at his auto shop and imposed fines for those caught in his speeding traps. That may have not made too many people happy. In 1967, a stranger, thought to be Billy Ray White, entered the trading post and shot and killed Bud and a part-time employee. The assailant left with $450. That day changed the nickname of Buddville to Bloodville, literally. Buddville was still occupied until 1979 when Bud's widow Flossie passed away, and so it's now a ghost town, bought and sold many times throughout the years. Even though Route 66 isn't used, it has its own exit and entrance off the interstate because he cozied up to people that much.
today. Number 5, we got Pyramidion Svalbard, Norway. The archipelago of Svalbard, located between mainland Norway and the North Pole, is home to about 2,145 humans. Not a lot. 1,000 polar bears and one seriously bone-chilling ghost town, Pyramidion, named for the pyramid-shaped mountain looming nearby. Pyramidion came to prominence in the 1930s, when the Soviets took ownership of the area's coal fields and quickly began mining operations. After World War II, they started spending more money on the enterprise, building hospitals, cafeterias, and houses, all in the block-style fashion typical of the Soviet-era architecture. The biggest hit came in 1996 when an airplane flying from Moscow to Svalbard crashes en route, killing all 141 passengers on board, many of them Pyramidion residents. The tragedy slashed the morale, and it was fully abandoned in 1998. As for the site today, Rachel Newer of Smithsonian Magazine sums it up perfectly. It was as if several hundred people had abruptly stopped what they were doing and simply walked away. At number 4, we have Tamestown, Shanghai, China. China is a big fan of replica cities. In fact, Shanghai has 7 European-themed towns built to give wealthy residents a new place to call home. There's a Dutch-inspired canal-lined neighborhood, a Paris replica completed with a 300-foot Eiffel Tower, and even a slice of Sweden-inspired churches and Nordic houses included. But we're particularly fans of the Thames town. A British copycat just 40 minutes from downtown Shanghai. Here you'll find a scale replica of the Christ Church, statue of Shakespeare and Winston Churchill, and even some familiar red telephone booths scattered here and there. As curiously cute as this mini city sounds on paper, well, it ended up being a complete failure. In fact, all of the 7 experimental towns are now pretty much abandoned. Well, how do you visit? Well, travelers are more than welcome to walk the cobblestone streets of all 7 replica cities. To get to the Tamestown, they recommend taking the Shanghai Metro 9 to the Songjing Xingxing station, and because I'm pronouncing those words absolutely correct, you guys won't get lost. And then, if you make it to the station that I just said, you can take a taxi for the rest of the way. Only about 2.5 miles away and about $2 USD. Finally down, and at number 3, for abandoned towns you shouldn't visit, we're talking about the Great Saltire, Utah. And if you find yourself in Salt Lake City, Utah, you'll probably hear about the Great Salt Lake, or the Dead Sea of America, where you can float on the water. Now, I must tell you that you'll encounter corpses of dead seagulls, swarming flies, and a putrid odor. If you take the plunge, there's no way to miss the Saltire, a huge building with Moorish domes that you can see at the same time when you can smell the stench. The Saltire that you see now is actually the 3rd one. The first one was built in 1893 in order to provide a safe venue for recreation for families. It became immensely popular with all kinds of events until its pavilion and few other buildings were ravaged by the fire in 1925. Although it was built a second time, it never achieved the same popularity. In a period marked by the Great Depression, World War II, and several mishaps, it finally got destroyed in an arson fire in 1970. The 3rd one was built in 1981, approximately a mile away from the original venue. But you kind of take away the whole history of it, so I can see why it never became as popular. Now, number 2 on this list, we have Silver City, Idaho, which was at one point one of the largest cities in Idaho. So just imagine one of the largest cities being abandoned. Imagine where I live in Toronto, I'm going out my door, and it's like, where did everybody go? Well, the town was established in the mid-1800s during the, well, you guys guessed it, the gold and silver rush of the western United States. By the 1880s, the town's population rose to 2,500 people. At its height in the 1880s, it was a gold and silver mining town with a population of around 2,500, and it had approximately 75 businesses. As mining in the area began to die down, so did the city. In 1942, the last mine in the area was closed. Well, you can still visit Silver City, which currently has around 70 buildings, including old churches, a hotel, and it has a lot of old homes that you can see. And finally, in at number 1, when it comes to the creepiest place in America, no one can miss Bannock Ghost Town because of its paranormal stories. This old mining town is located near Grasshopper Creek in Montana. The area is famous as a National Historic Landmark and operates as a state park in the US. The photos of this place are wild. Literally, it looks like the quintessential Wild Wild West. To enter Bannock, follow the easiest ways to get there. From Dillon, you can take the interstate highway route to quickly reach your destination. It was famous as a mining town, but then moved towards a visiting place, and gradually the town got empty from the residents before the 1960s. Now visitors come to explore the unlocked buildings.
Centralia was once a thriving mining town, but in 2009, the last living residents were finally evacuated from the town due to its toxic atmosphere and general ground instability. Since mining was no longer a career or necessity in the early 60s, the town's mining shafts were left abandoned and untouched, many of which ran straight beneath the town. In 1962, a fire, whose origins are unknown, ravaged these mining tunnels, turning Centralia into a furnace, burning 140 acres of land and producing temperatures upward of 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit under the earth. 1,000 degrees. That's crazy. Now, this not only caused the ground to crack, but produced toxic smoke as well as ground temperatures that made much of the town uninhabitable. There was no way to extinguish these fires, and they continue to burn hot to this day. Now, if this scenario sounds familiar, that's because it is. Horror fans know that the game Silent Hill was based on this town's tragic history. These days, no one lives there, but I can't believe people were still there in 2009. Number 9. West Castleton, Vermont. West Castleton, once small, was once home to the slate quarries that New England is now known for. It was also the home to immigrants from Ireland, Russia, and Italy post-Civil War, and thrived for some time around 1850 when West Castleton Railroad and Slate Company found themselves on the shore of Lake Bomoseen. For roughly 50 years, West Castleton was able to ride the wave of the boom and bust era, but quickly fell to its eventual demise in 1929. It continued to fight a losing battle against the times as slate was no longer a popular option in construction, and that's what they were known for. By the time the Great Depression took hold of the Green Mountain State, the quarries were drained and rendered unprofitable in the 1930s. Along with its moneymaker becoming abandoned, the town was, as well as the people, up and left their homes in search of better opportunities, which makes the most sense. Remnants of the town remain in Bomoseen State Park, where hikers can find various homes crumbling and caving in but still standing that remind them what the 1930s were like. Number 8. Seattle Underground, Washington. Many have heard of the Great Seattle Fire, which occurred in 1889, but not many know Seattle was also home to an underground shopping network. These stores took a hit after the fire, and though they remained open, the city was eventually condemned in 1907. It had become home to dodgy dealings and was deemed fairly unsafe to wander around at that point, while also giving off a creepy vibe of something that was once thriving but now remained a shell of what it had once homed. Today, some of these underground passageways have been restored and are open for tours. However, many remain closed to the public and are abandoned still to this day. Number 7. Bullowville, Florida. This land was destined for use as a plantation by Charles Bulow in 1821. The goal was to house and grow cotton, indigo, rice, and even sugarcane, with an additional mill building under the construction of John Bulow. The local natives, the Seminole Indian tribe, didn't appreciate their land being turned into profit and set fire to the setup around January 11, 1836. And listen, I usually don't support arson, but in this case, good for them. Abandoned by January 23rd, a great rosy glow was observed on January 31st in St. Augustine. John Bulow, discouraged by the destruction, died 3 months later at the age of 26 and was buried in St. Augustine. All that is left today of this plantation are the ruins of the sugar mill, several wells, a spring house, and a crumbling crumbling foundation of the mansion. The cleared fields have been reclaimed by the forest, and the area looks much as it did when it belonged to the Seminoles. Number 6. Roanoke Island, North Carolina. The legend of Roanoke Island has been passed down from generation to generation since 1590, when a group of 120 English settlers mysteriously vanished. In the late 1500s, the English made their first attempts to settle in North America on Roanoke Island, which is off the coast of North Carolina. These first settlers ended up returning to England because of a shortage of food and Indian attacks. In 1587, a second colony was founded on Roanoke. It was then that Virginia Dare, the first baby born to English parents in North America, was born. John White, the leader of the colony, went to England to get more supplies, but when he returned in 1590, the settlement was deserted. All the settlers had mysteriously disappeared, and the only clue he found was the word Croatoan carved in a tree. Croatoan was the name of an island south of Roanoke that was home to a Native American tribe of the same name. Perhaps then the colonists were abducted by Native Americans, but to this day no one knows what happened to them. Number 5. Langville, Montana. Langville was actually a real town in a small rural spot, possibly on the Eastern Plains. Now apparently it vanished entirely sometime in the early 2000s. The town even showed up on Google Maps, but no one could find it in person. Google Maps apparently has saved images from street views, but no map of the town. There's also been more than 7 million recorded searches for the town, and they have come up with no one seems to know why or explain this as it doesn't exist. Today you'll struggle to find any photos or online mention of it. Legend has it that sometime in the early 1900s, a mysterious force swept over Langville and turned its inhabitants inside out. The inside out inhabitants either died off or disappeared shortly after. Then some entity or organization didn't want anyone to know what happened. They came along and washed away all evidence of the town's existence. The cover-up went so far as to scrub the internet of any mentions, evidence, or accounts. Believers would tell you that Langville disappeared because its people vanished under nefarious circumstances. Furthermore, they believe the government wants to keep it a secret from us, and it seems like only the inhabitants could give us the truth. Number 4. St. Pierre, Martinique. In the late 1890s and early 1900s, St. Pierre, Martinique was known as a beautiful town, but they had something unique, a volcano. Now, citizens of the area were so used to the volcanic activity that no one took it seriously when fresh steaming vent holes and earth tremors started during April 1902. The minor explosions began at the summit of the volcano, ash began to rain down continuously, and the nauseating stench of sulfur filled the air. Again, no one thought this was an issue and that they should have left town. Even worse, more than 100 snakes slithered down and invaded the town. Then on May 5th, a landslide of boiling mud and water from the Etang Set crater lake spilt into the River Blanche. It was followed by a tsunami that ended the lives of hundreds of people. Then 3 days later, May 8th, Mount Pelee exploded, sending an avalanche of white hot lava straight towards the town. Within 3 minutes, St. Pierre was completely obliterated, and of its 30,000 population, there were only 2 people who survived. This was the worst volcanic disaster of the 20th century. Number 3. The New City Complex, New Jersey. This town was originally called the New City Complex, but later was called Demon's Alley, and you'll find out why. Located along Route 23, the town was built by the City of New York Water and Reservoir Plant in order to house the workers of the facility. Things seemed to be pretty normal for a while, and then in 1992, it was found that the homes were abandoned with no sign of burglary and everything in order, all possessions left behind, and in some cases, even meals left out for people who would never come home to eat them. Ever since, legends have abounded. One very popular story is that in the 1980s, a stranger moved into the town, after which there were various unexplained phenomena, and it was soon suspected that this newcomer was a cult leader. The mysterious individual then apparently led most of the townspeople down into the basement of one of the homes on false pretenses, and then proceeded to have their lives ended by members of his cult. Now, there's no evidence that this took place, but the legend persists. Other theories are that the homes are abandoned set of a movie, or the site of a bout of rando or carbon monoxide poisoning, or that it was haunted, but no one really knows. For now, these houses sit rotting away and have become a popular urban legend in the area. Number 2. Urkhammer, Iowa. This small rural town was apparently in rather good shape until around 1928, when some aerial photos emerged that appeared to show that there was no one living there and that the field looked overgrown and untended. Things took a turn for the weird when there was a report from a tourist passing through who stopped at a gas station in the town to fill his tank, after which he had learned he had been ripped off and there was no gasoline in there at all. He then angrily headed back to town, but reported that he could not reach it, as it seemed to forever remain in the distance no matter how fast he drove. Even when he ran out of gas and walked, he could not reach the town, which was still sitting there before him, forever out of his reach. Other people driving past the town began to report that the previously bustling town seemed to be abandoned and lifeless, and when some investigated, they found rows and rows of houses sitting peacefully with no sign of the occupants. Other reports of anomalies would come in from the town as well, such as people who seemed to have witnessed the town actually evaporating into thin air, as if being absorbed into some other dimension, with one such account concerning a group fleeing from the area during the Dust Bowl of 1932 and going to the town to retrieve supplies. And coming in at number 1 is Ashley, Kansas. Ashley was a tiny farming community of around 700 people, and on August 16, 1952, the area was rocked by a massive earthquake measuring 7.9 on the scale. When investigators finally arrived, it was oddly found that there was simply no one there. There was a smoking, heat-belching blaze fissure measuring 1,000 yards in length and approximately 500 yards in width. They found no one there, neither alive nor dead, even after a 12-day intensive search. An aftershock allegedly rocked the region in the coming days after the aborted search, and when rescuers arrived this time, the fissure was reportedly gone as mysteriously as it had appeared. Now, days before everyone disappeared on August 8th, there was a report from a local who claimed he had seen a small black opening in the sky, and not long after, police were bombarded with calls reporting the same thing. Things got stranger still when reports kept coming in about the weird atmospheric anomalies, and that there were also people who had mysteriously gone missing without a trace. Other reports would filter in that the town was in total darkness, as if the sun had never risen. Perhaps even more bizarre still were the reports that people were having conversations with long dead family members. Police would get hundreds of similar calls in the coming days, after which it was claimed that all of the children in the town had spontaneously vanished middle of the night on August 12, 1952. And by August 16th, everyone was gone.
Centralia in Pennsylvania. This is a town that's more eerie than it is mysterious due to a long burning underground coal mine fire that started in 1962 and continues to smolder to this very day. Once a thriving coal mining community, Centralia is now a nearly deserted place with cracked, smoke-emitting streets that seem to belong to a post-apocalyptic kind of world. Seriously, just look at some of these images. That is freaky. There's graffiti everywhere. There's these large cracks in roads with smoke that just constantly is billowing out of it like it's just been hit with a blast from an alien ship or something. The fire, which ignited in the coal mines beneath the town, led to widespread evacuations over the years. Homes were abandoned and the population dwindled as toxic gases and unstable ground made the town pretty inhospitable. What's left is a place where steam rises from the ground and graffiti-covered highways lead to empty streets. Number 9, Bodie, California. If you've ever wanted to hop into a time machine and visit a gold rush era town, then this place is for you. Only you won't find any people there anymore, but the homes and buildings are still standing. Nestled up in the Sierra Nevada mountains, this is a real deal ghost town that's been frozen in time. Walking down its quiet streets with old wooden buildings on either side of you, you can almost feel the history oozing out of the place. But Bodie isn't just about history, it's also said to have this strange vibe going on, even for a ghost town. A lot of folks who visit swear they've felt some ghostly stuff happening here. Nowadays, it's a state park, and they're careful to keep things looking just like they did back when everyone packed up and left town. So as you wander around, you're basically walking through a time capsule. Pretty cool. Next up, we have La Noria in Chile. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, this place was a buzzing salt pepper mining town filled with life and industry. But as time went on, the demand for salt pepper declined, and by the mid-20th century, La Noria was left abandoned. Now, when you visit Lenoria, you'll find it frozen in time. The town's buildings have decayed though, but what makes this ghost town especially creepy is all the bones. More on that in a minute. Walking through the deserted streets, you can't escape the feeling of stepping back in time when Lenoria was a thriving hub of activity. The place is also very isolated. It's in the middle of the desert, so that definitely adds another layer of spookiness to the place. But as stated before, one of the most haunting aspects of this place is the old cemetery and all the damn human bones. Here you'll find open coffins, some still housing human remains. Over the years, the ghost town was looted, so bones are scattered everywhere, pretty unsettling. It's said that you should never wander to this town at night, as the tortured souls of the dead rise from their graves and wander about. In at number 7, we have Hashima Island. Hashima Island, often referred to as Battleship Island due to its distinctive shape, is located off the coast of Nagasaki, Japan. This island played a vital role during the early 20th century as a coal mining community. Housed a substantial population of miners and their families in high-rise concrete apartment buildings. As the coal industry declined though, Hashima Island saw a gradual depletion of its inhabitants, leading to its ultimate abandonment by the 1970s. And today, it's a time capsule offering a direct look into its past. The island's concrete structures still stand today, although they've been exposed to decades of coastal elements. There's abandoned apartments, schools, and shops that remain untouched. It's pretty eerie. Next on the list is Oradour-sur-Glane in France. Oradour-sur-Glane, a village in France, holds a very dark and tragic history from World War II. Back in 1944, during the chaos that was the Second World War, the quiet village became the site of a brutal massacre by German troops. It's a very heartbreaking story where German soldiers laid waste to the entire village, not even sparing women and children. They left the village in complete ruin, and these were mostly civilians. They would herd them into churches and set them on fire, gunning down anyone who attempted to escape through the windows. It was just a complete massacre. Only 6 members of the village actually managed to escape. The village was never rebuilt either. The remains still stand today though, just frozen in time, like left exactly as it was when these horrors unfolded. The streets, buildings, and even the vehicles remain as they were, showing the signs of violence that took place there. As you can probably imagine, the place is eerily quiet. There's no one living there, and the usual sounds of daily life are completely missing. Number 5, Mount Sinabung, Indonesia. Mount Sinabung in Indonesia. This is something that is still ongoing. It's a series of volcanic eruptions that have led to the evacuation of villages in the surrounding area of the volcano. Mount Sinabung, located in North Sumatra, has been active for centuries, but in recent years it's become particularly volatile, and the eruptions have posed a significant threat to the communities living in the vicinity of it. When Sinabung starts to rumble and spew ash and lava, local authorities kick into action. They closely monitor the volcano's activity and issue evacuation orders when necessary to ensure the safety of the residents, and these orders are not taken lightly, as volcanic eruptions can be unpredictable and of course deadly. The process of evacuating towns and villages near the volcano is pretty challenging. Families leave their homes behind, their possessions, and sometimes even their livelihoods. Temporary shelters are set up to provide a safe haven for those displaced by the eruptions, and these shelters offer basic necessities like food and water, medical assistance, but the evacuations are not only a physical upheaval, but also an emotional one. As you can imagine, families are forced to leave behind their ancestral lands and the life they've known for generations. And at number 4, Bangalore in India. Tucked away in the Alwar district in Rajasthan, Bangalore isn't your average town. It's famous, or perhaps infamous, for being one of the spookiest spots in the country. So the story goes like this. Supposedly, back in the 17th century, a sorcerer cast a curse on the village and things went downhill from there. The place was abandoned, and it's been a ghost town ever since. People who visit often say they feel this strange, unsettling vibe, especially after dark. Some even claim they've seen ghostly apparitions. Bangkar isn't your typical tourist spot, but it draws in thrill seekers and folks curious about the supernatural. Folks like me, I would absolutely love to check this place out. The town's got these, of course, old ruins for its temples and houses just sitting there as if time stopped centuries ago. And speaking of time, they've got a rule: nobody's allowed in after sunset, because, you know, ghosts and demons and all that. Obviously hard to say if the place is genuinely haunted, but the legends surrounding the place and the deserted structures make it a magnet for those who, love a good scare and dose of history at the same time. At our number 3 spot, let me take you to Ruby, Arizona. It's a real gem in the desert. Wish I could say that pun was not intended, but it was. Back in the early 20th century, this place was buzzing with life, all thanks to the copper mining boom. It was a kind of town where everybody knew everybody, and things were looking pretty good. But as they say, what goes up must come down, and the copper boom fizzled out, and by the mid-1900s, Ruby was nothing more than a ghost town. The folks moved on, and what they left behind is a piece of history stuck in time. Those that wander around Ruby today feel like they're stepping into a time capsule. There are houses, a school, a general store, all just sitting there as if the residents were there one second and gone the very next. A slice of life from another era preserved in the desert. What makes Ruby even cooler is its remote location. You're out there in the rugged desert and you can't help but feel a sense of isolation. As you can imagine, I've never been. That's probably why it's a magnet though for history buffs and folks who love exploring the past. And at our second place spot, we have Poveglia in Italy. This small island off the coast of Italy is known for being one of the most haunted places in the country. Poveglia's history is pretty dark. Back in the days of the bubonic plague, they used this entire island as a quarantine zone for the sick and dying, and thousands of people who were infected with the plague were shipped off here to keep a disease from spreading to the mainland. You can only imagine the horrors that went on. No surprise why this place is often referred to as the Island of Death. As if that's not creepy enough though, in 1922 there was a mental hospital built here. Rumor has it that some pretty messed up experiments were conducted on the patients too. Stories of mistreatment and suffering are enough to send a shiver down your spine, and today Poveglia is abandoned and it's said to be one of the most haunted places in Italy. Visitors have reported strange noises, ghostly apparitions, and an overall sense of dread when they set foot on the island. But considering its history, it's not very surprising. In fact, though, the Italian government has banned people from going there. You need special permission to even get close. Finally, though, we have Pripyat in the Ukraine. Probably the most famous abandoned town in history. Pripyat was once a bustling city, home to workers of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. It was a typical Soviet-style town with apartment buildings, schools, all the amenities you'd expect in a thriving community. Life was humming along until that fateful day on April 26th, 1986, when the Chernobyl disaster struck. There was a catastrophic explosion at the nuclear plant that released a massive amount of radioactive material into the atmosphere. Pripyat, being just a stone's throw away, was in the direct path of the destruction. The entire city was evacuated in a hurry, and its residents left behind their homes. Some of their belongings are still there. Even their pets were left behind, thinking at the time that they'd return soon, but they never did. And today, Pripyat is a complete ghost town. The abandoned buildings, the rusted playgrounds, the empty streets, that's all that remains. A time capsule of Soviet life in the 80s, but with a radioactive twist. Because yeah, the post-apocalyptic looking setting isn't creepy enough already. There are mutated animals that have been reported in the area too. Would definitely be a pretty surreal place to experience. Geiger counters click away as you walk through the eerily quiet streets. Nature is taken over with trees growing through apartment windows and wildlife returning to the area. Would you ever visit this place? I honestly think I would. If all the proper safety measures were in check, I think I'd have to. This town in Fukushima Prefecture once housed 20,000 residents, but in one night, in March of 2011, the most destructive earthquake in Japanese history hit off the coast. This caused a massive tsunami that hit a nearby power plant. After 3 meltdowns and widespread nuclear fallout, the residents were forced to evacuate. The town was completely abandoned for a year until April of 2012, when residents were allowed to slowly make their way back in, but only in 2 designated zones. Zone 3 was completely off limits and still remains so to this very day. There have been many attempts to try and rebuild the town into what it once was. Rents have been reduced. There's even been plans to build a Pokemon-themed theme park, but most people just don't want to go anywhere near the place based on the radioactive contamination, which is understandable. Number 9. Kantubek, Uzbekistan. This abandoned town sits on Vozrozdanya Island and was abandoned in 1992 after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. This town was built to house about 1,500 people. Most of its residents were scientists working at a top-secret USSR biological weapons testing site. This place became an absolute nightmare following a couple, little accidents that left a number of people infected with smallpox. After a field test went wrong, 2 people ended up dying. Then about a year later, 2 fishermen were found dead, likely from the bubonic plague that had leaked out of the testing facility. Then antelopes started keeling over and dying. Dead fish were being hauled out of the sea in big nets. The island became a dumping ground for anthrax in the 80s until the lab was finally closed down, with the town becoming deserted by 1992. Apparently there's plans to turn the area into a national park. I would not go anywhere near this place. In 2002, there was a US-led expedition to neutralize the anthrax because they were scared that possible bad people were going to try and get their hands on it. Even still though, I don't know, just let bygones be bygones. Radioactive, is it ever fully gone? And at number 8, we have Cracow, Italy. Man, this place looks beautiful. Just wanted to start by saying that. There's definitely an eeriness with abandoned towns, but this one has such a majestic quality about it. It doesn't look all depressing and gray like an abandoned city you'd see in Russia or something. So, Cracow is a historic hilltop town located in the Basilicata region of southern Italy. Its history dates back to the 8th century when it was founded by the Greeks. The town prospered during the medieval period when its economy based on agriculture and craftsmanship, but in the 20th century, Cracow faced a number of issues. In 1963, a landslide forced many residents to abandon their homes and relocate to a nearby valley. There were also earthquakes in 1972 and 1980, which further damaged the town's infrastructure, making it basically uninhabitable. The Italian government declared Cracow a ghost town, and the remaining residents were forced to leave due to safety concerns. Today, the town stands as this hauntingly beautiful shell of what it once was. The buildings are crumbling, the streets are empty, at least when tourists aren't visiting. The town's also been used for a filming location for a number of movies, most notably Quantum of Solace. Next on the list is Wittenoom, Australia. This is just a very sad story. So, this town was built in 1947 in Pilbara, Western Australia, housed 20,000 residents, and was bustling with life at one point. They had a movie theater, 2 schools, a hotel. The parents of most of the families living there, though, worked in the nearby Blue Asbestos Mine. This was a time where people didn't know how harmful asbestos was. By the mid-60s, though, it became a known thing and the mine was shut down and a lot of residents up and left. The thing is, they'd already been exposed to it for so long, over 2,000 of these former residents would go on to die of asbestos-related illnesses. The area has now become known as Australia's Chernobyl. Number 6, Pyramiden. Pyramiden in Svalbard, Norway was once a thriving Soviet coal mining settlement established in 1910 by Sweden. It was later sold to the Soviet Union in 1927. The town's name translates to the pyramid in various languages, named after the pyramid-shaped mountain nearby. During its peak, Pyramiden housed a significant population. The town's economy relied heavily on coal mining, and it continued to operate under Soviet management until the early 90s, but in 98, Pyramiden was abruptly abandoned when mining ceased. The residents left behind buildings, possessions, and remnants of this once vibrant community, and today Pyramiden stands frozen in time as a ghost town. And the harsh Arctic climate has preserved the town remarkably well. Buildings remain standing, showcasing this Soviet-era architecture and interiors, and the town's infrastructure, including the swimming pool, school, cultural center, still eerily intact. And at number 5, Bannack, Montana. This abandoned town in Beaverhead County, Montana was founded in 1862 after the discovery of gold in Grasshopper Creek. It quickly became a booming mining town, attracting thousands of prospectors and settlers seeking fortune in the gold fields. With the prospect of wealth, though, came a ton of violence and lawlessness. In 1863, the infamous Plummer Gang, led by Henry Plummer, became the town's sheriff, secretly organizing a gang of outlaws who terrorized the area. There were a series of robberies, stagecoach holdups, violent deaths happened as a result. The citizens, fed up with this rampant crime, formed the Vigilance Committee, which eventually captured and hanged over 20 members of this gang, including Plummer, in a single night. Shootouts, barroom brawls, other violent incidents, it was just happening all the time here back in the day. It was your classic Wild West town. But as the gold reserves dwindled and new mining opportunities came about in other places, the town's population started to decline. Today, Bannack stands as this well-preserved ghost town with over 60 historic structures remaining, including houses, saloons, and a schoolhouse. Because of its violent history, though, some visitors and locals believe the place to be haunted. Numerous ghost stories and paranormal encounters have been reported over the years. Next on the list, we have Frisco in Beaver County, Utah. This was a mining town that boomed in the late 19th century. Established in the 1870s, it was named after the San Francisco Mountains. The miners extracted silver, lead, and zinc from nearby mines. During its heyday, Frisco was notorious for its lawlessness and violence. The town earned a reputation as one of the wildest mining camps in the West. Shootouts, brawls, and other violent things were common. At one point, multiple men would die violently on a nightly basis. I've heard up to 12, which is insane. I don't know if that's true. 12 a night? How would you even have people left after like a month? But anyway, but as the mines were depleted and economic opportunities started to die down, the town's population began to decline. By the 1920s, the place was mostly abandoned. It's now a complete ghost town with abandoned structures, crumbling homes, and decaying industrial facilities. Number 3, Centralia, Pennsylvania. Centralia used to be a lively, you guessed it, coal mining town in Columbia County. Back in the mid-1800s, coal mining really kicked off, and the town prospered through the late 19th and early 20th centuries, but trouble began in 1962 when a fire started in the coal mines beneath the town. Nobody knows exactly how it began, but it's believed to have started in a landfill and abandoned strip mine pit. Efforts to put out the fire failed, and it kept burning underground. By the 80s, it became clear the situation was just dire. Carbon monoxide was seeping from the fire. The government stepped in, and in '84 a law was passed to move Centralia's residents. Most buildings were torn down, and people were relocated to nearby towns. Even today, though, like smoke and toxic gases continue to rise from the ground. It's very apocalyptic looking. In its second place, we have St. Elmo, Colorado. St. Elmo is a ghost town located in Chaffee County, Colorado. Founded in the late 1800s, St. Elmo was once a thriving mining town, mostly focusing on gold and silver mining. There was a general store, hotels, saloons. Over the years, as mining activities started to die down, residents left St. Elmo, and by the 1920s, the town became mostly abandoned. But today, many of its original buildings still stand. This place is a ghost town in more ways than one, though. Annabelle Stark, also known as Dirty Annie, was one of the last residents of the town. She lived there with her brother Tony Stark, who suffered from mental health issues. As the town started to empty, Annabelle and Tony were among the few who still remained, and Tony's mental state deteriorated further due to the isolation and lack of social interaction. He was often seen walking the streets, muttering to himself. Annabelle, caring for her brother, lived a reclusive life in their decaying family home, Dirty Annie Stark became something of a local legend, known for her resilience and determination to stay in St. Elmo despite its abandonment. Some reports suggest that Annabelle and Tony were eventually the very last two residents of the town, refusing to leave even when most of the buildings around them were completely empty. Today, this ghost town is said to be haunted by the ghost of Dirty Annie, still roaming the empty streets at night as its ghostly protector. And finally, we have Ardres-sur-Glane in France. The 10th of June 1944 was a dark day for the residents of this quiet farming village. SS Major General Heinz Bernhard sent his troops in the Waffen SS Panzer Division to the village in retaliation against French resistance activity in the area. They wanted to send a message, so they destroyed the entire village and pretty much everyone in it. Even people just passing by the area were dragged into the massacre. In the end, only 6 people managed to escape. These victims were just civilians, mostly being women and children. People were taken to barns where they were down with machine guns. Others were loaded into a church which was set on fire. Anyone attempting to escape through the windows were gunned down. It was about as nightmarish as it gets. And today, what remains of the village still stands, left exactly as it was after the massacre. A haunting reminder of the atrocities that took place on that day. We're starting things off with Miamisburg in Montgomery County, which has some pretty spooky spots, including an Arby's. All kinds of disturbing stuff is said to go on at this fast food joint. Employees closing up for the night alone have said they've heard laughter coming from the basement, only to find no one there. Some will also report having their hair pulled by some unseen force. There's also a ghostly man who sometimes is seen staring into the oven during opening or closing hours. Hill Grove Cemetery is probably the most well-renowned haunted hotspot in this town, though some visitors will say they see a young girl crying over a grave, but when approached, she'll just stare at you for a moment before vanishing into thin air. There's also the grave of a preacher's daughter who took her own life after being disowned by her family. A Bible was said to have sat on her grave, with stories of it appearing broken one instant, but then perfectly fine the next. Next up is East Liverpool, which is home to a couple haunted parks, a haunted cemetery, and of course, a haunted phone booth. As silly as a haunted phone booth might sound though, the story is actually pretty spooky. So apparently a young man was killed in the area and his ghost haunts the street that he died on. Some will say that on some nights, especially Saturdays during the month of March, passersby will hear ringing coming from the booth. And if you answer the phone, you might just hear a somber, ghostly voice on the other end telling you to look across the street. And if you do, you just might see a headless young man waving before vanishing into the shadows. Now we move on to Sandusky, Ohio, which has a few notoriously haunted spots. One is the Sandusky County Historic Jail and Dungeon. This place, which was built in the 1840s, is no longer a jail or a dungeon, or I guess it technically is a dungeon and a jail, but it's just not operating as one. There are tours of the place though, and the staff and many people who visit claim to have experienced some pretty eerie stuff. Something that's said to happen every so often has to do with the courthouse security system. So sometimes at around 2 or 3 in the morning, the motion alarm just goes off, detecting someone or something outside the dungeon door. Whatever it is will then make its way up the steps to the first floor of the courthouse. Now I say whatever it is because when security cameras get checked, there's usually no one in the footage. But on rare nights, there is a shadowy figure with a brimmed hat seen spotted sitting on a bench outside the courthouse. The fire alarm has also been known to be pulled even when nobody's near it. Whatever spirits are haunting this place, they seem to really enjoy loud, obnoxious noises. And on top of all that, you also have your typical disembodied sounds like voices and footsteps when there's nobody else around. We're gonna stay in Sandusky for a bit though, and talk about Cedar Point. Cedar Point is one of the most popular amusement parks in the US, but it also has a bit of a dark side. When we think of haunted theme parks, it's usually the abandoned ones where we picture all the paranormal stuff going on, but Cedar Point is still very much open. It was built in 1870 1970 though, so it's been around for a while, and any theme park that old has definitely had its fair share of horrific accidents. Get it? It was a fair share theme park. Alright, one of the most haunted attractions was the Frontier Town Carousel, which is no longer there, but people would often claim to catch a glimpse of a ghostly woman riding one of the horses. She's said to be the wife of the man who carved the horses on the carousel. He'd killed her after finding out that she was cheating on him with a jockey, so now her spirit is attached to the carousel, coming out at midnight to ride a fake horse every full moon, which she's probably not too plussed about. For a woman who really seemed to like being around horses, a wooden one probably just doesn't cut it. Not to mention that she's stuck on a pretty boring ride that was built by the dude who shot her to death. So there's also that. Next on the list we have the town of Worcester. You thought the haunted Arby's was intriguing? Try the haunted Pizza Hut in this town. Yeah, you can't even grab a slice of pizza in Ohio without something paranormal or weird happening. I'd love to do a road trip through Ohio visiting every haunted fast food restaurant, actually. Could call it like Fast Frights Ohio tour or something. So this Pizza Hut is part of a big plaza that was all built over the grounds of a former insane asylum. So there could be some lingering spirits in the area, most of whom seem to really stick to the Pizza Hut. There's also a Taco Bell in the plaza, which some paranormal stuff is said to go on, but there's not as many stories about that place because there's probably like 5 people who goes to Taco Bell, especially when you have a Pizza Hut right there. I'm gonna get tons of comments now from like Taco Bell fans being like, Taco Bell's the best. I don't know. I just think it's kind of mediocre. Staff at the Pizza Hut, though, have seen figures vanish into the walls. One manager who was closing up for the night was startled to hear footsteps following her and then turned around to see nothing but a white mist hovering in the air. Marietta in Washington County. This town is probably most well known for Anchorage Mansion, which is said to be very haunted. It was built by Douglas Putnam for his wife Eliza in the 1800s, but it's said Eliza died shortly after moving in, and people claim to have seen her ghost wandering around or peeking out of windows. Later on, the mansion was turned into a nursing home, where residents also reported seeing Eliza's ghost. Some say there are secret tunnels under the mansion as well, maybe from the Underground Railroad, but nobody really knows if they're haunted as well, but it's Ohio, so I'm presuming they are. Marietta is also home to a haunted Comfort Inn, where the televisions are known to turn off and on by themselves, doors open and close on their own, and guests will occasionally wake up with the feeling of cold hands on their body, luckily to find that no one is there in the room with them. I'd rather have a ghost in my room than a chilly intruder. Again, in Washington County, we have the village of Fredericksburg, which is home to Robin Industries, which does custom molding for rubber and plastic components. It was formerly the Fredericksburg pottery site, which had a pretty dark past, and the building is rumored to be haunted by multiple spirits. There were 2 major tragic events at Fredericksburg pottery site, including 2 devastating fires and a fatal train accident that took the lives of 12 people. So employees at the site have reported some pretty eerie encounters, like feeling sudden cold spots. Now, I usually kind of roll my eyes when people say cold spots. It's like, all right, spot's cold, whatever. But these are extra strange because staff will report feeling them behind machinery that runs at extremely high temperatures. One story involves the ghost of a man blamed for the train derailment, who is said to show up in the mold room. In the shipping room, sightings of an older gentleman believed to be the former mayor who witnessed the tragic train accident have also been reported. Then there's the apparition of an elderly woman who's been seen swinging doors open and shutting off machinery. The stairwell leading to the office is said to be guarded also by a spirit, with one employee experiencing a strong stench and then a sudden gust of wind that nearly knocked her down the stairs. And unless someone was eating some bad burritos from Taco Bell that day, I think it might have been a ghost. So I know we've covered Dayton, Ohio already, but I didn't mention the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is said to be one of the most haunted spots in the state. It's even been featured on Ghost Hunters. One eerie story involves the ghost of a young Vietnamese boy believed to have perished in one of the museum's helicopters. Visitors have reported sightings of the boy wandering the museum grounds after dark. And of course, then they go up to talk to him, and he's not actually there. It's not just some kid who ran into the place. There's also a German World War II fighter plane said to be inhabited by the ghost of its pilot. Visitors claim to have seen the pilot waving from the plane's window. Seeing as it's the ghost of a German World War II fighter pilot, though, I'm not sure if what he's doing is actually a wave. The helicopter named Hopalong is said to be haunted by a pilot who met a tragic end, with staff reporting sightings of him desperately flipping switches in a futile attempt to escape. The Black Maria, known for its secret missions during the Vietnam War, is also said to be haunted by the spirits of soldiers who died on board. The boxcar plane, famous for dropping the atomic bomb on Nagasaki, is also rumored to be haunted by a young boy who is said to dart past it during the night. Haunted inns, always a staple of small villages, and Granville in Licking County, Ohio, has one of its very own, the Buxton Inn. This place dates back all the way to 1812, so plenty of history with this place. Even Abraham Lincoln stayed here, and some of those who were escaping from the Underground Railroad stayed here at one time as well. So with all the people who have passed through the doors and slept under this roof, all the history surrounding the building, it probably comes as no shock that some energy is said to linger within the inn. Not only do you have the spirits of past guests who have long since passed, but even former deceased employees are said to have never fully left. Like one of the previous owners, Ethel Bonnie Houston, for example, who's become known as the Lady in Blue. Several guests have claimed to see a woman in a blue dress roaming the hallways, only to walk right through closed doors or just vanish into thin air altogether. Some have also smelt cigar smoke out of nowhere before spotting a man who also vanishes into thin air. This is said to be the ghost of the inn's founder, Major Buxton. And we're to finish things off with Loudonville in Ashland County. This place is known for its two supposedly haunted spots, one of which is a hotel, the other a park. First, there's Mohican State Park, which is said to be haunted for a couple different reasons. Mainly though, there used to be an asylum on the land in the 1800s, which might help explain some of the ghostly stuff going on. Witnesses have also reported seeing a mysterious light in the park for over 2 decades. Then there's Landell's Mohican Castle, which is actually a hotel, and a damn cool looking one too. Looks like something you'd see in Norway. It was built on the grounds of a former English/German church. The story goes that in the late 1800s, a dispute over language during worship services led to the church mysteriously burning down after the Germans decided to relocate their relatives' graves. Since the current owners acquired the property in 1991, a series of unexplained fires have just been plaguing the place, including the destruction of a book factory in 92 and an on-site restaurant in 2007. Some believe the land is just cursed, with guests reporting sightings of a girl in blue in the graveyard and hearing crying in the cemetery and pool building. People will also claim to see Civil War-era soldiers in their rooms. Elmendorf, Texas was the home of Joe Ball, who committed a series of gruesome crimes in the 30s. So this is an absolutely insane case here. I'm sure viewers from Texas are very familiar with Joe Ball, but I'd never heard of this story, and I'm pretty surprised that it's not more well known. So Joe Ball was a serial killer. He has a couple interesting nicknames, the Butcher of Elmendorf and the Alligator Man, both of which fit. He fought in World War I, and when he returned to Texas, he started making money as a bootlegger. Then, when Prohibition ended, he opened a saloon. At the back, he built a pond where he kept 6 alligators. He'd often feed live cats and dogs to the gators, but that didn't satisfy him for long. Soon, women in the area started going missing, including his own wife. Now, in 1938, 2 county sheriffs arrived at his property to question him about several of these missing women, and Ball pulled out a pistol and took his own life. But a handyman of Joe's, Clifford Wheeler, told authorities about how he'd assisted Ball in disposing of the bodies of 2 women who he'd killed, feeding them to his alligators. It's believed Joe Ball may have taken the lives of at least 20 women.
Next up, we have a small town in Texas that was once home to a lesser known but incredibly gruesome serial killer, Henry Lee Lucas, who claims to have killed over 3,000 individuals during his criminal career, which spanned from the 1960s all the way into the 1980s. Also known as the Confession Killer or Highway Stalker, Lee Lucas was born in Blacksford, Virginia, and at a young age lost his father to hypothermia, and so his mother was forced to raise him on her own. Clearly, Henry wasn't happy with this, as his mother was the first person he killed in 1960 in Michigan. He was sent to prison but only served 10 years due to overcrowding. And that's when he moved to Ringgold, Texas with his niece Frida Powell to work for a sick woman named Katie Rich, both of whom he would later kill. While he claimed to have ended the lives of thousands of individuals through restricting airways, impaling them with sharp objects, blunt force, and hit and runs, he was convicted of only 11 killings.
Texarkana is home to one of the creepiest cases in the state's history, the Texarkana Moonlight Killer case. So this case was heavy inspiration for slasher movies that would come years later, along with tons of urban legends. The killer literally wore a sack with holes cut out for his eyes and would attack innocent couples while their cars were parked in an area called Lover's Lane. It's about as classic as it gets. So the first attack happened on February 22nd, 1946. A young couple, Jimmy Hollisand and his girlfriend Mary Jean Larry, were attacked by a man with a pillowcase over his head carrying a firearm. Jimmy was pistol whipped and very injured, and Mary was attacked, but the two lived. Many of the other victims wouldn't be so lucky though. He would attack 6 other people, and it all happened in a period of 10 weeks. The assailant became known as the Phantom of Texarkana, and the case was never solved.
Regular hospitals are bad enough, but abandoned and haunted hospitals definitely take the cake, so of course we had to include at least one on today's list. The Yorktown Memorial Hospital, located in Yorktown, Texas, between San Antonio and the Gulf Coast. It was built in 1951 to house and treat those suffering from substance abuse. When the hospital was abandoned in 1980, the living residents and staff members exited the building. But what about those who died during their time in the hospital? Well, it's said that they still inhabit the premises to this day. And no, I'm not talking about 1 or 2 patients who died while under the hospital's care. I'm talking about thousands, over 2,000 to be exact. So really, it's no wonder the place is extremely haunted. Honestly, I'm surprised it didn't open up some kind of gateway to hell and land a spot on the list in our last video. Check it out if you'd like. Those who have entered the building have reported feeling a strange rotting sensation and claim that they can feel the tormented soul's energies in the walls. Not only that, but many people have said they've heard screams and disembodied voices while inside, as well as seeing strange floating lights in the hallways, despite the fact that the building is ancient and has no electricity. If you've been, let me know your experience.
Now we move on to Kerrville, Texas, with the case of Janine Jones, a nurse who also terrorized San Antonio. What an absolute creep this woman is. Yes, she is still alive. She took the lives of an estimated 60 young patients in her care between 1970 and 1982. She'd inject patients with a variety of substances that would cause cardiac arrest. She first started working as a licensed vocational nurse at Bexar County Hospital in San Antonio in the pediatric intensive care unit. But hospital staff started realizing that an abnormal amount of young patients were dying in Jones's care. Now, here's where things get really infuriating. An investigation could have been carried out right there and then, and things could have ended here. But the hospital didn't want any negative attention, and they certainly did not want to be sued. So instead of alerting authorities, they asked all of their current LVNs to resign and then rehired exclusively registered nurses to take control of the pediatric ICU. This meant that Jones could just move on and start working at another hospital, which she did. So more young patients died at her hands at a pediatrician's clinic in Kerrville. There, a doctor finally found she'd been accessing lethal amounts of succinylmethonium chloride. So in 1985, she was finally convicted and is now serving life in prison.
Circling right on back to Yorktown, it appears as though this particular town is home to not only an incredibly haunted hospital, but also an incredibly disturbing creature known as a Wendigo. Although the creature is best described in Algonquin folklore, which is Canadian for my Americans on this channel, many locals of the town claim to have seen one of the beasts. Many people have compared the Wendigo to a skinwalker, as it is tall and lanky and somewhat humanoid, but can shapeshift and has been known to devour human flesh. And when a Wendigo finds the body of a deceased hiker, it will often inhabit it, and then turn to killing those who attempt to come into contact with its human exterior. Many people also claim to have seen the demon take the form of animals and follow and stalk them throughout the area. Stay safe out there in Wendigo.
Speaking of creepy creatures, Texas is also home to an entity known as Goatman, who stalks the old Alton Bridge connecting Denton and Copper Canyon. So the tale traces back to a black goat farmer named Oscar Washburn, who'd moved his family near the bridge. And Washburn earned a reputation as a very reliable businessman and was nicknamed the Goatman by locals. He even hung a sign on Alton Bridge pointing towards his home, proudly declaring, "This way to the Goatman." But in 1938, members of the local government who had ties to the Ku Klux Klan kidnapped Washburn from his family. They took him to the bridge, hung a noose around his neck, and threw him over the side. When they looked down, expecting to see him dead though, they found the noose completely empty. Now, locals warn that crossing the bridge at night without headlights, just as the Klansmen did, will summon the Goatman. People crossing the bridge will claim to spot ghostly figures, mysterious lights coming from the woods, and even physical encounters like being touched, grabbed, or having rocks thrown at them from some unseen force. Or of course a half-man, half-goat monster.
Next up, surprise surprise, it's another creepy hospital. Worley Hospital in Pampa, Texas. The institution was opened in 1928 but closed its doors in the 1970s due to lack of revenue. After 40 years of sitting abandoned, the building has become quite a talking point for the town's locals, who claim that it is haunted by patients who died within its walls during its 42 years of operation. After many townspeople reported seeing a black silhouette in the window of the abandoned building, ghost hunters began to take interest. Those who have entered have been greeted with decrepit and decaying walls, ceilings, and floors that have been heavily vandalized. But it appears as though trespassers aren't the only ones to make their way through the empty halls of the once surgically specialized facility. Many of the patients who died within the building's walls, as well as a 25-year-old nurse who was poisoned while working at the hospital, are said to roam the grounds. People have reported seeing demonic creatures stalking them while exploring the floors of the hospitals, with the majority of the activity taking place on the 3rd floor, where surgeries would have been performed when the hospital was running. Oh, and the current owner of the grounds wants to renovate the building into a ministry. Coincidence? I do not think so.
League City, Texas is home to an area known as the Killing Fields. So there is an abnormally large list of people who have been found dead in this stretch of land surrounding Interstate Highway 45. And there are also a number of people who've gone missing from this area and have still yet to be found. And out of more than 30 cases, only a small handful have ever been solved. The place is such a hotspot for mysterious deaths that a task force, Operation HALT, was set up just to investigate these incidents alone. The first cases started cropping up in the 70s with the discovery of multiple bodies scattered throughout the area, and over the decades, law enforcement agencies have recovered the remains of numerous people, many of them young women. And it's not even clear if there's just one assailant responsible, a group, or if the area is just an ideal spot to kind of get rid of evidence. We really don't know. It's a complete mystery to this day.
And finally, we have a man with a thing for eyes. Stealing them, that is. It all started in the 1990s in a rural area of Dallas. Is it a town? Not really, but this case is pure evil, so listen up. During the 90s, SEX workers began turning up dead at an alarming rate, with one very striking thing in common. You guessed it, their eyes had been completely removed from their sockets. The killer was Charles Albright, also known as the Eyeball Killer. When he was young, Charles had quite the knack for taxidermy. He would stuff many animals a week, doing his best to make them look pristine, but there was one thing missing: eyes. His mother refused to buy glass eyes for the animals, and so instead Charles would use buttons. When he got a little older, he slept with an SEX worker, which led to him getting a transmitted infection. I feel like the pieces are starting to come together. His obsession with the eyes and his hatred for women of this certain profession grew exponentially over the years, and on December 13th of 1990, he took his first life. After violating the woman, he fired a projectile from a handheld weapon, execution style, into the back of her head and carefully removed the eyes of the victim with what has been described as surgical precision. Charles was convicted of 1 killing, but most likely committed at least 3. He was sentenced to death and was executed in August of 2022. Shepherdstown, West Virginia, is arguably one of the most haunted places in America, according to those who have visited the town and experienced its dark paranormal atmosphere. The town was actually formed long before America became a country. well, 46 years at least, and it was originally named Mecklenburg, but that changed when Thomas Shepard obtained the land in 1734. It's considered a historic Civil War area, as just 3 miles up from the town, the Antietam Battle, the most gruesome battle of the Civil War, was fought. A hotel in the town is also home to some pretty dark deaths. In one instance, a man took his own life after losing a card game. In another, a young man was killed for winning. Both men are said to roam around the hotel, and many claim to hear the younger of the two crying out for his mother, as he did during his last living moments. But perhaps the most famous sighting in the town is that of a dark, shadowy figure that lurks in the clock tower after dark. Oh, and the bakery is also haunted, with almost anyone who enters it claiming to have felt the sensation of hands pushing up against them and hearing whispered conversations in the waiting area despite being completely alone.
Next on the list we have Dingus in Mingo County. Love that name, Dingus. This is a very small and remote community. There are under 2,000 residents, and one of the things that makes this place really interesting is that one of the only ways to access the town is through a mile-long, very narrow, one-lane tunnel, which can be aggravating at the best of times, I imagine, and very dangerous at the worst. But Dingus also has a pretty dark history. It was a railroad and mining town at one time, and it was one of the most lawless places in the state. Lawmen struggled to keep order, and shootouts between police and outlaws was pretty common. And one thing the residents did not take kindly to were outsiders, and a lot of this was racially motivated. It wasn't uncommon for immigrants to be met with armed townspeople at the other end of the tunnel who would use very aggressive methods to keep them away. A lot of dark things happened at Dingus Tunnel, not just from violence like this, but accidents as well, like train collisions. So, aside from all the dark history, it probably comes as no surprise that many locals claim the tunnel to be quite haunted.
Next up, we have the Weston Asylum. You know we had to have at least one asylum on our list. It's classic. Back in the mid-1800s, the town of Weston was home to the controversially named Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. It was used to house and treat the mentally ill of the time. However, that pretty much meant anyone whose opinion opposed those in positions of authority, or women who sometimes cried. But I digress. While the exact number of deaths that occurred on the grounds remains unknown, local historian and state hospital expert Titus Swan has estimated the number to be in or above a 5-figure range, meaning that at least 10,000 people died in the hospital. So, like, no wonder this place is super haunted. I mean, I think we know what kind of torment went on in those places back in the day. Not only that, but this particular asylum was often overcrowded, meaning that even without what would today be considered gross misconduct, the living conditions were already pretty bleak. Today, those who enter the once abandoned building that has since been reopened to the public as a historic landmark have reported feeling a sense of extreme dread, seeing mysterious, shadowy figures roaming the halls, and hearing the disembodied, helpless screams of patients past.
Next up we have Sheep Squatch of Boone County. I'm kind of cheating here with this one, adding a whole county to the list, but the creature has been spotted all throughout the place, so I kind of had to. The Sheep Squatch, also sometimes referred to as the White Thing, is described as a large, woolly, furred monster with goat horns and razor-sharp teeth. Sightings of the creature started being reported in Boone throughout the 90s, beginning in '94, when 2 youngsters spotted the strange creature while playing in their yard. Now, what I find interesting about these reports is that the creature is always described as having white fur. Now, why do I find this interesting? Well, with Bigfoot sightings, there's usually a chance people could be misidentifying a bear, whereas here, like, what animal is there the size of a bear with white fur? Polar bears, but they're not really roaming around West Virginia. The creature was spotted again in 1995 by a couple driving down a road in Boone County. They spotted a large white-furred animal sitting in a ditch. They didn't know what it was, so they stopped to look. Then it raced towards them. They sped out of there, but found large scratch marks on their car once they made it back home.
If you're gonna do an asylum, you might as well do a prison, specifically the West Virginia Penitentiary located in the small town of Moundsville. The prison opened its doors in 1863 after West Virginia split from just Virginia, becoming its own state. During its 119-year operation, some pretty dark stuff went on inside of its walls, which earned the prison a spot on the United States Department of Justice's top 10 most violent correctional facilities list. The recreational area of the prison, located in the basement, often saw various forms of illegal activity, including assault, violation assault, substance abuse, and even killings. At any given time during the penitentiary's operation, between 600 and 700 inmates were held on the grounds, but even still the prison was highly overcrowded, with inmates often having to sleep on the floor. And over the years, the property saw almost 1,000 deaths. Many people believe that those who died within the prison never actually left. In fact, many visitors to the grounds have seen and even photographed the shadowy figure of a man that roams the halls. And the staff working on the premises of what is now a historical site have reported being accosted while on the job. Oh, and remember the basement? Many people have claimed to have heard screams coming from its depths, but most are far too scared to go down and check it out.
In the town of Princeton sits the Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. Unless you live in Princeton, West Virginia, or are a paranormal enthusiast, though, you've probably never heard of the place. It's not much of a tourist destination anymore because it's been abandoned since 1988. It's said that the park was built on cursed land, and that's not just because people have seen specters lingering around the park. It's because there were tragic deaths at the park, and the place was built on land with some pretty dark history. There was a massacre on this land back in 1785. The landowner, Mitchell Clay, had lost 2 of his sons to a Native American raiding party and sought revenge. He gathered up a bunch of locals and attacked them right back. Then, in 1926, a man named Conley Trigg Snidow Sr. decided the land would be a perfect spot for a theme park. Over the years, there were 2 drownings in the pool. The park was also closed for a time after a failed health inspection. Then a former employee of the park bought the land in 1988, but was forced to close it down again just a year later because of increased insurance rates. So not the best luck for this place. And now the old structures like the Ferris wheel and swing ride stand eerily unused, coated in rust and haunted by ghosts. So they say.
This next one is pretty sad, but also pretty remarkable. In 1897 in Greenbrier County, and I can do a county because James did a county, so if we go down, we go down together. Anyways, in 1897 in Greenbrier County, Zona Shu was found dead. A funeral was held and Zona was laid to rest, but she couldn't rest, and so Zona's spirit visited her mother and explained to her that she had not died in the way everyone assumed she had, but instead she had been killed by her husband, who had been routinely aggressive throughout their entire marriage. Upon learning this information, Zona's mother demanded that her daughter's body be dug up and re-examined. And sure enough, upon closer inspection, it became clear to the prosecutor that Zona's neck had been broken. Her husband was arrested for the crime, and the city even installed a plaque recognizing Zona's ghost's involvement in the conviction of her killer.
The town of Harper's Ferry is said to be teeming with paranormal activity. In fact, it's said to be the most haunted town in the state. Harper's Ferry played a big role in the Civil War, and a lot of both Union and Confederate soldiers died here. In September of 1862, an estimated 13,000 soldiers died at the Battle of Harper's Ferry. There were also a number of raids, one of which was led by John Brown, who's said to haunt the town to this day. Some also say that on some nights you can hear the ghostly sounds of drummers marching their way down High Street. And there's also the tale of Screaming Jenny. So Jenny had no family, no home. She lived in an abandoned storage shed by the Harper's Ferry Railroad. One fall night, Jenny sat huddled by a fire, and then a spark leapt up from the fire, landing on her clothes, which began to catch fire. She was too cold and weak to notice before it was too late. She started screaming and rushed down the train tracks for help. Now here's the thing, when you're on fire, your vision is kind of blocked by light already, so she did not see the 2 glowing lights of a train rushing right towards her, and she was flattened by the train. Ever since this incident, on particularly cold autumn nights, some say they can hear the sounds of screams coming from the train tracks. Conductors have even seen a glowing figure flailing in the night, only to vanish into thin air once the train gets up too close.
Next up, we have the Parkersburg North Bend Rail Trail. I'm not sure if that's a tongue twister or the title of an adult movie. But anyways, in the daytime the trail is quite lovely and pretty serene, a great place to go for picnics and lunch dates. However, I suppose if your lunch date is at a park, it's already a picnic. Anyways, you could also go for breakfast, but I wouldn't recommend you go at night. Why? Because it's haunted. Well, part of it is, at least. Specifically, the 1,300 foot long tunnel that can be found along the trail, aka tunnel number 19. It is said that a woman wearing a white dress walks mournfully around inside of its dark walls. The legend goes that she was a bride riding on a train with her groom when she was pushed off and died beside the tracks. People in the area have also reported having found human bones in abandoned houses nearby, but that's an entirely different mystery for another day.
And finally, we have the town of Grafton, which is famous for one of the strangest cryptids in the United States, the Grafton Monster, which was first spotted in 1964 by a reporter named Robert Cockrell. He described the creature as this large 7 to 9 foot tall beast with white skin and no visible head. He was driving home from work late at night when he spotted the creature in the middle of the road. They raced home, then gathered 2 of his friends to come back to the site to investigate. The creature was gone, but they claimed to have come across large footprints, and they also heard a strange, low, bellowing whistle sound in the distance. The next day, dozens of calls started coming into the local newspaper, with people reporting to have spotted a similar looking creature, and that's when Cockrell decided to write his article. Reports that the cryptid started dying out by the end of that summer in 1964, but there's still sporadic sightings here and there.
Starting off this list today, we have Armero, Colombia. The story behind this town is a 20th century tragedy that serves as a reminder of the dangers of volcanoes. It's 1985 and Colombia's Nevado del Ruiz, a seemingly peaceful snow-capped volcano, decides that it's showtime. But this isn't your average volcanic eruption with just lava and ash. Oh no, this volcano went all out. The heat from the eruption melted the mountain's glaciers, creating a monstrous lahar, a deadly cocktail of water, mud, rocks, and other debris. Basically, nature's own concrete flood. This wasn't a slow-moving disaster movie scene where you can just run to higher ground. This lahar traveled with the speed and force of a freight train. Now, imagine the town of Armero situated in a valley below this ticking time bomb. Most people were caught off guard as the magnitude of the threat wasn't fully understood or communicated. So when the lahar hit, it was like a scene from a nightmare, obliterating everything in its path and leaving little time for escape. Homes, buildings, and lives were swept away in just moments. Over 25,000 people lost their lives in what would be remembered as one of the deadliest volcanic disasters in the 20th century. This tragic event was a wake-up call on the importance of volcanic monitoring and emergency preparedness, and it just went to show the true power of nature and how crucial it is to respect and understand the warning signs that it gives us. Alright, next up on our list today we have Dhanushkodi. Nestled in the southernmost tip of India, this town was not just any town, it was a bustling port, a bridge between India and Sri Lanka, brimming with life and commerce until disaster struck. Picture the vibrant markets, the sounds of daily life, and the trains chugging away. It was a hub of activity and connection. Then came that fateful day in 1964 when nature unleashed its fury. A ferocious cyclone with winds that roared like the engines of 1,000 trains struck with merciless force. The waves, as tall as mountains, crashed onto the shores, obliterating nearly everything in its path. More than 1,700 lives were lost, families were torn apart, and the town was left in ruins, submerged under the relentless waves. waves. Today, what remains of the town is a spectral landscape. The ruins of the railway station and the church stand eerily, monuments to the town's tragic past. Visitors to this ghost town can't help but feel a chill as they wander through the remnants. Next up on our list today, we have Yungay in Peru. Once a buzzing ski resort town cradled in the arms of the breathtaking Peruvian Andes, this town had no idea what was in store for it. It was the kind of place that postcards are made of, with tourists flocking to enjoy its winter sports and local charm. But in 1970, Mother Nature had a catastrophic twist in store. A mammoth earthquake struck, its epicenter alarmingly close to the town. The quake was so powerful that it dislodged a massive section of ice and rock from Mount Huascarán, Peru's highest peak, which loomed ominously nearby. Now imagine a colossal wave of ice, rock, and debris hurtling down the mountain at speeds that defy belief, completely ruining everything in its path. This wasn't a scene from a disaster movie, it was a grim reality for Yungay. In just a few harrowing minutes, the town was buried under a thick blanket of destruction, claiming the lives of over 20,000 people in one of the deadliest avalanches in history. Today, the original site of Yungay stands as a ghostly memorial to that fateful day, largely untouched except for by time and the elements. Visitors to the area can still see the remnants poking through the earth. A new Yungay has risen a few kilometers away, striving to move forward while honoring the memory of the past. Next up on our list today, we have Dallersheim in Austria. Nestled in the picturesque landscapes of Austria, Dallersheim is a village steeped in history, with its origins tracing back to the year 1143. Imagine walking through a place where every stone and corner has a story dating back almost 9 centuries. But Dallersheim's serene beauty hides a tumultuous past. During the grip of the bad guys regime during World War II, the village's tranquility was shattered as residents were compelled to leave their homes, their familiar life turned upside down to make way for a military training ground. After World War II, the village didn't resume its former bustle and charm. It remained uninhabited, a ghost of its past self. Yet the echoes of history linger. Today, visitors to Dallersheim can explore the remnants of what once was. A church that stood witness to centuries of change, a town square that once buzzed with daily life, and a graveyard where the village's ancestors rest, perhaps still holding on to their stories. Next up on our list today, we have Kataktchan in Russia. Found in the heart of Russia's vast and frost-bitten far eastern region, Kataktchan tells a story deeply etched in the annals of wartime and post-Soviet history. Initially established during the throes of World War II, the town was birthed through the toil and sweat of prisoners who were put to work in its coal mines. These mines not only fueled the war effort, but also sustained a burgeoning community against the backdrop of harsh and unforgiving landscapes. For decades, Kataktchan thrived on coal extraction, its residents carving out a life amid the extremes. However, the dissolution of the Soviet Union marked the beginning of the end for this isolated settlement. Economic turmoil ensued, leading to the closure of one of its lifeblood coal mines in the early 1990s. The town's fate was sealed in 1996 when a tragic explosion wreaked havoc, causing irreparable damage and leading to a mass exodus. By 2010, Kataktchan had become a ghost town, its abandoned buildings and desolate streets standing as eerie testaments to its very turbulent past. Once home to over 10,000 souls, its population plummeted to 0, leaving behind only memories and the chilling silence of abandonment. Today, Kataktchan exists in a peculiar limbo, captivating the curious and the adventurous who venture to explore its ruins, a contrast to the vibrant life it once nurtured. Next up on our list today, we are heading over to Villa Epicuén in Argentina. Imagine strolling through a place that feels like a scene straight out of a post-apocalyptic movie. Well, Welcome to Villa Epicuén in Argentina. This isn't just your average ghost town, it's got a backstory that could rival any thriller. A thriving lakeside resort town buzzing with tourists, laughter, and life, families soaking up the sun, kids splashing in the water, Villa Epicuén was the place to be, especially known for its therapeutic salty waters, much like the Dead Sea. But here's the twist, nature of course had its own plans. Over the decades, the lake began to swell, slowly nibbling away at the town's edges, until in the 1980s, it devoured the whole place, submerging everything under meters of water. The town disappeared, leaving only memories and submerged dreams. Fast forward a few decades and the scene shifts again. The waters recede, almost as mysteriously as they came, revealing the skeleton of Villa Epicuén. Today, it's an astonishing sight. Buildings, trees, and streets all laid bare, encrusted with salt, and frozen in time. It's a little bit spooky, incredibly intriguing, and undeniably a one-of-a-kind destination that tells the tale of the relentless passage of time. Next up today we have Plymouth in Montserrat, a place that once thrummed with life, its streets bustling with the daily hustle and bustle you'd expect from a capital city, and now it stands in stark contrast. A ghost town that is eerily silent, its buildings and streets swallowed by nature's fury. Back in the summer of 1995, the earth rumbled, and Montserrat's Soufrière Hills volcano awoke from its slumber, dramatically altering the town's fate. Ash clouds billowed into the sky and molten lava crept through the streets, prompting a mass exodus. By December, the once vibrant town was left deserted, its 4,000 residents seeking safety elsewhere. Though a few brave souls ventured back, hoping to reclaim their lives, the volcano had other plans. In 1997, another fierce eruption forced even these resilient returnees to abandon their homes for good. Today, Plymouth is an uncanny testament to the power of nature, its buildings peeking out from the ashen landscape, a town frozen in time, with a population count that's dropped to an eerie 0. So while you can't really visit Plymouth for a casual stroll or a quick bite, its story continues to fascinate and to resonate. Next up, we are heading over to Tawurga in Libya. Oh, Tawurga. A place with a tale as haunting as a ghost story, but sadly, it's all too real. Imagine a town in Libya home to about 40,000 souls living their daily lives only for everything to change when the winds of the 2011 Libyan civil war blew through. This town wasn't just touched by conflict, it was transformed by it, earning the eerie title of Ghost Town. Schools, shops, homes all abandoned, the laughter and chatter of life replaced by silence. Fast forward to 7 years post-conflict and the image of Tawurga doesn't get much brighter. The residents were forced to flee, leaving behind their homes and their lives. They didn't go far, settling in a nearby town, but in a very different setup. Instead of houses, they lived in 250 tents. Despite the conflict and the loss, the spirit of the Tawurga community persisted, their resilience shining through despite the drastic change in their living conditions. Moving on down, we are heading over to Humberstone in Chile. Imagine stepping into Humberstone, a ghost town nestled in the parched Atacama Desert, which feels like wandering onto the set of an old Western film. Once this place was buzzing with around 3,500 folks, all mingling, working, and living their lives around the booming potassium nitrate, or saltpeter, industry. Saltpeter was the gold of its time, as it was a critical ingredient in gunpowder and fertilizers, fueling agriculture and warfare worldwide. From the late 1880s to 1930, this little town was like the Silicon Valley of saltpeter, shipping off heaps of this white gold to places near and far, and playing a crucial role in global economics and even in conflicts. Then, technology advanced. Synthetic alternatives to saltpeter emerged, and just like that, the demand plummeted. The town's heartbeat slowed until it stopped altogether mid-20th century, leaving behind a time capsule in the desert. Now declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site, Humberstone is now an eerie yet fascinating window into the past, showing how communities can rise and fall with the tides of industry and innovation. And finally, rounding out our list today, we have Texola, Oklahoma. Oh, Texola. It's like a postcard from another time sitting quaintly along the iconic Route 66. Now, imagine a place where the echoes of the past are so palpable that you can almost hear the hustle and bustle of its heyday. That's Texacola for you. Back in the day, 1930 to be exact, 581 souls called this town home. Fast forward to today and you'll find a drastically smaller, but nonetheless fascinating population of just 35. But why such a drastic drop? Well, Texola's story is intertwined with some major historical events. Cotton was king here until it wasn't, thanks to agricultural decline. Then came the 1-2 punch of the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression, which turned thriving communities into ghost towns across the plains. Despite these hardships, Texola has clung to life, its resilience embodied by landmarks such as the Magnolia service station and an adorably minuscule stone-walled jail.